Boom. Should be live. Let me check make sure my audio and everything's good. We should be set. All right. So, welcome back to week 4, guys. This is the last week of props, and I'm finally able to get out of Blender. So, you know, it's a good day to say the least. Nah, it's not that good, but all right. So, before we start, I did want to make a couple announcements, just some things that we're kind of moving into for this next week and stuff like that. That way, people can kind of get a little bit of time to think about what they want to do for February. So we're going to be doing. Wait, why is my audio repeating? That's odd. Let me check my audio real quick. It should be okay. Okay, cool. So February is coming up, right? Next week is when we start the new topic, right? So in the live stream plus the people that are part of that right now, there's like I think like 15 something people right now, and they voted on the next topic. So we're gonna be doing color keys. So if you're part of the Discord and you look into the live stream schedule, is this actual like JPEG right here. And we're gonna do 4 weeks of walking through color keys, right? So if you're interested in that, definitely please, watch the stream. We're gonna be doing it basically every week of February. And if you want feedback and you want to participate and you want feedback, please join the live stream. Plus, it's in the server shop. So if you join the Discord, check the server shop. And you can kind of join that, and we do, weekly feedback. I mean, it's feedback whenever you send it, really, but guaranteed weekly feedback every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So, if you're looking to get better at color keys or just want a little bit of information here and there, right? We'd love to have you. So, but with that in mind, right, let's cover some of my stuff. So I've been working a little bit this week, or a lot. Yeah, I really put in some time this week. For one, I was kind of feeling it, and then two, it just kind of got out of hand. So let me I want to walk you through the general idea of what we did, right? So starting with the ideation phase, we did the studies. Generally speaking, you kind of know what that means, right? The whole idea is when you look at, props and stuff like that, or you're trying to design something, right? You want to really look at something. You really want to understand, like, what is it that we're actually designing, right? Because, it's the same thing when, you ask somebody, hey, can you draw an owl from memory? It's like, we kind of know what an owl is, but you don't really know. You know what I mean? Like, unless you study it, really study it, it's really hard to kind of know these things. So whenever you're trying to design, really study, right? We took a whole week to kind of talk about that idea because it really is important, right? The difference between a really strong design and a pretty mediocre one is just that knowledge behind the references and the things that you can kind of bring in to the references because of that study, right? So that was week 1. Week 2, I'm going to open up the file here. So this is what we did, right? We kind of remember what was happening. And this was the ideation week, right? And I made a big distinction between ideation and variation. And I'm going to show you that this week. But looking at this here, we have 4 different cameras, right? There's the same color palette happening, right? Because, it's a camera at the end of the day. And there's like signifiers in each one that are relatively similar, right? So for example, that little robot section that I designed, I wanted it to be like this red part. I just kind of just put it as a placeholder just to kind of get things kind of, recognizable. Like we understand like, okay, that's the thing, right? But when you look at it, it's 4 completely different types of camera, right? There is a TLR camera, a medium format SLR, a rangefinder, and then the traditional 35mm SLR, right? And the reason I did this is because we don't know what format the camera needs to be, right? It's the different types of cameras that we want to go for. Because, I started off thinking, because I think the first week, the second week really, I built this one, right? This is the first one that I built. Because I was like, oh yeah, like the Nikon, F2, and then it had this whole thing, this module that kind of felt correct, right? Which, I mean, it's not bad, and we could have went that way. But ultimately, we decided to go this way with the medium format SLR, right? Because it felt a little bit better. I liked this format of like the kind of robot sitting on top, right? But ultimately, you know, this is kind of what we went, and we could have went any direction we wanted. It's really up to, I guess, preference, or, you know, whatever the art director or the client really wants to do, because you want to give them options, right? Because if you do, you know, 4 or 5 different, you know, normal 35 millimeter SLRs, like the one on the left here, what if they didn't like that? What if they wanted one of the other versions, right? That's what the ideation phase is about. It really is give them a variety of options, because we're not done here, right? And I'm going to show you in a second what I did after this past week, and then what we're going to get into for this week. But looking at this, it really is like, it's just different options of camera. It's not super exciting, right? But each one does kind of tell a different story and has a certain kind of vibe to it, right? So that's that one. Next, we picked the camera that we wanted, and then from here, right, I started making variations, right? So variation pass and the ideation pass are actually very different, and we oftentimes confuse it, and this happens so much at work. But if you wanna have a more successful kind of like hit rate, essentially, like ideas that hit more effectively, you kind of want to start the way I started, and then dial your way down into this this variation stage, because usually we start here, right? They're like, oh, let's make a camera. Like, this is the one that we picked, right? This one on the right here, right? This is the same exact, it's just the same model, right? And then they're like, cool, let me make a couple, you know, ideations. And then they, you know, they do the rounds, but essentially all 4 of these are exactly the same. There's some differences, right? There's obviously some differences. I'll talk about that in a second. But right now, it's all the same type of camera. It doesn't really give us any options. So whenever you're doing ideations, just remember, you're trying to push them as far as you can. You know, you want to kind of push that mold within the scope of what they're asking, right? And then once you have that, the variation stage comes in. That's when you start adding stuff. So from that second week, this is what I had. This is the box that I made during off screen when I was doing that stuff. And then now, from that, we went into this one, this second camera, I guess third camera, second from the right. But we kind of started doing this one, right? And the reason we kind of picked that one is because I just started like designing from this, right? And then off screen, I just kind of like added some things here and there. But ultimately, it was very similar to kind of what I have sitting right here, right? But I kind of didn't like it. It felt like, I was looking at it, I was like, it feels kind of modern. I was referencing this Mamiya camera. It's the RB RB or RZ60 something, right? RB67, I think, or RZ67. And it felt a little too modern. Like the lens felt really modern, the body felt really modern. And ultimately I was like, I don't really want to go that direction. So I duplicated it again and I made a variation, right? Now it's like, cool. Like the first variation from the far right one to this third one right here, the second one, is that I changed the head, right? Because I felt like that this kind of blockier robot head right here it was a pull from this kind of back section right there. So that's why it actually feels the same, because it is the same, but it matched the form language too closely. So I was like, cool, let me change the form language, because I wanted that robot to feel different, right? Because it ate an old camera essentially. So it's not exactly supposed to match as much as per the reference that I was talking about in week 1. So I changed the robot and I changed the lens, but I didn't quite like it because it was a little too modern looking. So then I switched, and then I changed the body of the lens, or the body of the camera, right? And I went with an older style camera, or it feels old, it feels more classic. This is like the Hasselblad kind of variation type, right? Same general idea, same process, except it's just a different style, right? There's like this chrome trim around it, there's these leather pieces, and I just kind of made the camera, you know, just to feel a little bit older. And you know, that was fine. And I kind of like got rid of like that eyepiece kind of thing, and I you know, kind of, you know, made some smaller adjustments here and there. But ultimately, I like the direction just a little bit more, but the lens didn't quite feel right for me, right? So I was like, cool, I need an older style lens. And I looked up another lens, and then now I came up with this one, right? So this one is actually ultimately the one I want to go for. I did this off screen, but the whole idea is the same. I just built another lens. I kept the same body. I kind of modified some things here and there, right? There's little adjustments and differences between these two, and it's a little more refined. On top of the fact that I kind of added some of these like darker sections, and I'll explain that in a second. But you know, the whole point is, when I'm looking at this, right? It's kind of like an evolution. And now, whenever I show this to the client, I'd put the strap on all 4 of them. But if I show this to the client, I'd be like, oh yeah, so this is kind of what we have. I changed the face between the different versions. I changed the lenses. I changed the body, and now they can be like, oh, we like the body off of 3, but we like the lens off of 1. We like the robot off of 1, or whatever, right? And now they have options, but I'm kind of narrowing it down to ultimately come to the conclusion that of what I want, right? So this is really important to understand. This is usually one of the biggest things that kind of trips up a lot of junior artists, is that they jump to this stage too quickly. That first idea that they have isn't either the best or isn't what the client wants, and they commit too hard, because if they didn't want this style of camera, I just made 4 of them. So it's like, well, we don't like any of them because that's not what we were thinking at all, right? And you're kind of like back at square one, versus the other way, even though it's looser, right? Like if you look at this, there's not as much detail. It's like a PS1 version, right? But the whole point is everything's there, everything's kind of fitting together, and then we can make adjustments accordingly, right? And we did that for each step, right? So just little things to kind of understand is, you want to kind of walk your way towards the idea. What you don't want to do is try to hit the hole in one, right? It just, you can try that, and sometimes it does happen, very, very rarely. But the whole point is, you want to kind of just get it closer and closer each time. You're kind of narrowing it down all the way until you want the design that you want, right? So that's how I did that. Very simple to understand, but very hard to actually do in practice, just because it's so easy to kind of get locked onto your first idea. Because when we started this, I had no idea we're gonna be doing a camera like this, right? But ultimately, we're like, that one's kind of cool. Let's just go with it, right? And so after that, right, let's turn all this off. Let me go to the next file that I wanted to show you. Week 4. Okay, so I just made a new file, really nothing that crazy. But oops, let me turn on scene lights here as well. All right, cool. So I made it's the same version, the same exact thing. I just took that file, I kind of added this cigarette. The other one had the cigarette, but this one's like all crooked and stuff. And I kind of tilted it just a little bit, I guess, I kind of made it off center, because the whole point of this phase, right? Let me turn this off so we don't see that. There you go. The whole point of this phase is because I wanted the, let me turn off that light. Why is that so weird? There it is. The whole point of this phase was because I wanted to add a little bit of character, right? And something I wanted to show you. So I had this robot, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, right? And what I did was I tried to find this. I was looking up this photographer in this old Japanese photographer. Let me show you. And he, it's not like 100% match, but it's kind of close. And so the idea was, I was like, oh yeah, there's this old Japanese photographer. He's smoking right now, right? I try to find a personality. And obviously I'm going to paint in a lot of these kind of nuances, but just getting that base kind of model, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I looked at him, I saw him smoking. I was like, oh dude, what if like we had this camera and he's kind of sitting there and he has that old man kind of like approach where he's like, he's kind of focusing. There's a cigarette popping out of his mouth. He's kind of like, he's cranking the shutter and all that stuff. And like, it just feels like there's an emotion. There's a character kind of happening there. Cause this robot, it's not just a robot. It's a character, right? It's not just a prop. It's a partner in this game. So you want it to kind of feel like there's a personality there. So you see this guy, right? So he has his hair kind of slicked back, and his hair is kind of long, so it's kind of like pushed back on the side and kind of combed all the way back. So what I did was I kind of turned the side panels dark, right? So it looks like, I don't want to say like hair, but there's the graphic read of hair, right? And then I was like, oh, what if I made his hair like here, like it's like slicked back? But the whole idea is it's a solar panel. It's just like, logically speaking, if you look at it, it's like, oh, that's a solar panel. But in reality, what I did was I made a hairline, right? And then I wanted him to feel kind of smarter, right? So what I did was I grabbed these eyes, right? The 2 dots in the black section, right? And I pulled it down, right? Because I wanted him to feel like he kind of knew what he was doing. This isn't somebody that is, I guess, like an amateur when it comes to like, doing photography. It's someone very experienced, somebody that has, years on these cameras, right? Because the higher you bring this up, and I'll show you, the kind of dumber they start feeling, right? Because usually with the big brain, right, or the big head, there's this connotation of smart, right? He's like, he uses his head, but the smaller that section is, the more, I guess, kind of like dumb he kind of feels. You know what I mean? Especially like, you know, you get like, if I were to drag that up, oopsies. There you go. His mouth is down at the bottom here, and his like lip kind of feels very big, feels kind of like monkey-esque. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't have the same vibe. Obviously it's like leaning off the 3D, but you know, there's a idea here that's kind of happening. And so the more you kind of bring these ideas in, the better these designs tend to be. You know what I mean? It just evokes a certain kind of emotion, right? Kind of like, let me show you something. Fine. So if you've seen Finding Dory, right? Pretty crazy reference, but there's Dory's dad, right? And he's like this middle-aged fish, right? I mean, you know, he's supposed to be a dad. And when you look at it, it's pretty cool because, you know, there's the blue tank, right? There's like Dory on the right there, right? Oopsies. When you look at it, you know, there's that black pattern that fish has, right? And so when you look on the left, they kind of pulled that design back, and he feels like he's a balding older guy. You know what I mean? Even though it's the same pattern that a blue tang fish generally has, right? The whole point is they kind of made these little adjustments to make him feel a certain way. They could have made it a normal hairline, but he has a receding hairline, right? So that's the same kind of idea that I brought into this thing, where it's like, you know, it's not like as animated, right? But these little design things, these little design cues of having these kind of darker panels on the top and sides, right, kind of makes it feel like there is a receding hairline of sorts. And then, like, you know, I'm just imagining him smoking his cigarette while he's like looking at this thing, right? He's kind of like focusing. I'm gonna adjust the eyes and stuff in the paint, but the whole point is, you know, I'm trying to create this moment, right? I'm trying to create this idea of this robot kind of like, you know, has a personality and has a character quirk to it that I really kind of want to show off, right? And so the next thing after that was I wanted him to have arms, because he's the one that's going to be controlling this camera, right? The idea is you're gonna the character is going to be able to see what's going on, but the character is the amateur photographer, and he's the one that's going to kind of be carrying the ability to really take pictures really well, right? And so I wanted his arms to be the strap, so I made the camera strap here, and what I did was this bottom part of the strap here, like right there, you can kind of see the hand that's on the bottom of the lens, right? There's that thumb section. It's like a mitten essentially. But instead of like, you know, having it wrap around in a more organic way, it kind of felt like it just creates this hand that kind of feels like it's grabbing the bottom. Same with like the side here. If you look at it, it feels like it's a mitten that's kind of cranking the reel, right? And so it just, you know, even though it's still a camera strap, it just has this feeling like, oh, he has arms and he's doing something, you know? And then it can like convert to a camera strap whenever he needs, right? So little things like that, you know, who knows if it's truly successful? Who knows if it's like the best idea in the world? But the whole point was when I designed the camera the first time, it was mostly about the shapes, trying to get that right. And then after that, once I kind of got in the right range, I started adding the personality quirks that I thought would probably make this a little bit better, because it's not just a thing. There's a personality here. There's a feeling that you want, because you know, when you design this partner character, this robot character, right? It's not just, you know, a bunch of boxes and metal shapes. You know what I'm saying? So really long explanation, but little ideas like that really do go a long way, and it helps the audience kind of get an understanding of what's happening, right? And after that, I just added this quick like gimbal looking thing, because I wanted this is going to be strapped to the side of the car. I'll show you in a second, but the whole point is it's going to be on the side of the car, and it's going to be pointing at something, right? Which is ideally probably the first painting that we did with that huge centipede. Like, it took that picture, so that's what we want, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Really long explanation, but the whole point is, you know, just there's thoughts here, right? There's ideas. It's not just the object. It's not just the prop. There's a way that the character is going to engage with this. There's a way that the audience is going to see this thing, and you really want to show that off, right? So don't save this. Let's go into what I'm going to be doing today. So let's open the PSD. So ultimately, this is what I did. I took that car from a couple weeks back, right? And then I just rendered it out. I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't set up anything like, you know, I just put the camera in the scene, right? I just needed that gimbal to kind of feel like it's integrated into the car. I'll do some like extra stuff to kind of make that look better. But the whole idea is, you know, we have the car that we have, that buggy, right, from previous weeks. And then now I just try to create a graphic shape with this camera. So in this case, you know, I wanted the lens to kind of pop off, right? So I kind of added a light here, and it's like light on top of dark, right? And then, you know, obviously the background's transparent, but we'll get to that in a second. And I really wanted that cigarette to kind of pop off. So I made sure that in the silhouette, in the graphic read, you can already kind of see what's happening. And then there's gonna be like, you know, smoke and all that stuff kind of happening. And hopefully, you know, get some cool like expressions and stuff to kind of like make this guy feel like he's a little older, a little long in the tooth, essentially, you know what I mean? So, but yeah. That's what I worked on, right? Nothing too crazy, but just the whole point is, you know, think a little bit deeper, try to find these little like strings to kind of pull and see what your design does, you know what I mean? So cool. All right, let's do this. So what I did here, right? I have the base render here. I'll just show you what that looked like. Well, I guess it looks like this, right? But so I just kind of grabbed the render, and then now I kind of layered it out. So I just rendered it with the car alone, right? And then I rendered it with the camera by itself, and then I rendered them together. Because what happens is, if you render things without like the other things around it, the car reflections, the lights and stuff, they don't behave correctly. So I kind of like, if I unclip this, you can kind of see it all popping back into place. I need all that to kind of feel correct, but I need the silhouette of the camera. So I just rendered that, clipped it in, and now I have a full camera separate from that background with the same lighting that I need. And I did the same thing with the shadow layer here, because, you know, we want consistency in shadows, right? So we'll kind of adjust that a little bit later. But the whole idea is, you know, now the camera is separate from the car, which is separate from the shadow, which all kind of works together in terms of lighting, because all the lights and stuff are kind of like pieced together really nicely. So from there, we're just gonna start painting. So, cool. That's the long explanation. That's the the what's happening here kind of idea. So, oops. Damn, that took 20 minutes to explain. Oh, if you guys have any questions, hit me up. I have some stuff I want to talk about. We have some things on the docket in terms of you know, just ideas that kind of, I guess, happened in the last week and things. So if you guys want to talk about some stuff, hit me up. Next week 8. There you go. Let's do these two. How's it going, guys? How's Discord treating you?
Going good.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going.
Oh, there you go. So, what?
Also just going.
It's just going. Everyone gets so shy. All right. So, I'm just okay, real quick. If you know anything about me, if you think I'm painting this from scratch, you're dead wrong, right? We never do that. That's psychotic. So what I'm doing here is I already did the paintings, right? It's the same project, it's the same car, same time of day, same general time of day. Really what I'm looking for is an in-between. Probably, if anything, I'm probably actually gonna be looking for a shot just like this, because I need the same time of day that this shot has, that the other shot, like, cause this is him currently taking the photo of this shot, right? This is the point of view of what that camera's looking at. So I should probably, you know, match that idea pretty closely. So I might do I was planning to do a halfway between these two, like this is sunset, and this is like, like right when the sun kind of like crusted under. So I'm gonna try to hit that like right before that. Like, if this is like 20 minutes before this, I want like 10 minutes after this section. That's the kind of idea I'm going for. So I'm gonna grab this guy, and hopefully it just does the work for me. You know what I mean? Because if you're painting things more than once, you're wasting time, right? You could be like hanging out with cats. You could be doing anything else. Okay. Boom. Dude, it's too easy, man. Like, what are we doing? Shit, it's not that easy. It's not lining up correctly. That's okay. Actually, what I need to do, stop being such a junior. I need to put on a grid. So, for those that don't know, I'm a stickler for grids. If you're not putting grids and you think you're above that, let me tell you this, you're not. And just stop messing up in life. You know what I mean? Like, just stop making bad decisions and put a grid on there. Because if you don't, you get called out for it. I mean, that's really dumb, especially as a professional. You know what I mean? If you're anything other than like a beginner level student and you're getting perspective wrong, I'm sorry to say it, but you're messing up. You know what I mean? So, sorry, my cat's being insistent right now. Exactly. Even the cat is mad that we don't put grids. I have I think like weekly, because I teach other classes and stuff, and I'm just like, I have these conversations basically weekly where it's like, oh yeah, put your grid on. And I have people like, they just don't do it. And then like, oh, I did it in 3D because I did this in 3D. So all this is perfect, right? Technically speaking, in a grid sense, right? But the problem is, I got to paint on top of it now. Right now it's up to me to kind of keep it consistent. And the issue is I'm not perfect, right? I'll kind of mess things up. And even me, that's like, hyper aware of like a lot of these like kind of perspective things. I get it wrong all the time. And so, like just do it. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. Because the grid is perfect, or the perspective on the 3D is perfect, doesn't mean you're perfect. You know what I mean? So cool beans. Let's go. Oops. Omar asked in the chat, just to make sure I'm understanding everything right. So an idea would be, for example, 4 completely different ideas. Then variations would be picking one idea, then adding more versions. That's exactly it. So for example, let's like change the topic, right? I need an archer. I want you to design an archer for me, right? Pretty easy task, right? Just, somebody that has an arrow. So now, what's the first thing that you're going to do? You're probably going to type in archer, and then, you can create variations based off that guy, right? But what I need you to do first is figure out, what types of archers are there? Because there's longbow, there's compound bow, there's like Mongolian archers, there's, Greek archers or whatever, you know what I mean? There's all sorts of different archers with different arrows and different types of bows in the world, different cultures, different time periods, everything. So when you create your idea, you need to kind of hit every single one of those, because even though they might not like the compound bow idea, maybe they like the longbow. But if you think just straight up, like, if you think, oh yeah, like an archer nowadays, and you do a compound bow, like, no, this is a fantasy game, or this is something older, right? Obviously you'd know that. But the whole point is, you don't know what they kind of want in that beginning, so you kind of need to, add in like as many different ideas as possible. The parameter of the project will kind of tell you what you need to do. So it's not like you wouldn't be that off, right? But the variations would be, oh yeah, there's the ideations would be, what type of archer are we looking at? What type of time period do we need? And then the variations is, oh, let me change the form language on that archer. Let me change his style of clothing or her style of clothing, right? Depending on what gender you're trying to hit, right? And so, you know, all these different ideas can kind of come later, but we need to know, are we even in the right ballpark when it comes to those archers? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, little things like that. It sounds kind of like simple, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, just do, but in reality, you'd be surprised how easy it is to kind of lock on to some of these ideas like too fast. Especially like if you're on a deadline of some sort and you're like, oh, I need to kind of get something done by the end of the day, or I need to have a certain, I guess, level of idea by a certain time. It can get very easy to kind of lock into something too quickly, and you're kind of making the decision for your art director in this case, which is bad, which is like really bad because that's their job, not yours, right? So. Cool. Sun coming from the right-ish. Yeah, let's do something like that. Dope. Kylo Legend says, camera taking picture of a camera. Hell yeah, dude. That's how we do it, man. All right. So I'm just grabbing my layers and I'm just adjusting, right? Because I just want to get that mood and tone right. For everybody like starting off painting, or like when you're doing when you're starting your environment designs, right? Really try to establish that background first. If you establish that first, everything else is going to fall into place pretty quickly. If you don't, oftentimes you'll kind of run into this issue of like, oh, things aren't dark enough, things aren't light enough, or like things aren't matching together, right? The background kind of holds everything together. So really make sure that you, just establish all this stuff first, and then we can get into like, all those other things later, right? So, because now the car, the camera, everything has a kind of resting place. Now it has an ability to, we can kind of see what tones things need to be, Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about why I chose this specific angle / like why I even did that, because I think the natural tendency, the natural like inclination is, oh, I have this 3D model, cool, so I'll screenshot it or render it, right, in 4 different angles, right? It's like the front, side, top, 3/4, right? Just get that turnaround, like, hey, here's the prop, you know what I mean? It's a prop design, here's the prop, right? But the issue with that is it doesn't sell the idea very well, you know what I mean? Like, I think inherently with a lot of designs, there is just more to the design than just the shapes themselves. You know what I mean? Because when you see something like, let's say like a horror movie, right? And you see something in like just a white void, I guess that can be kind of scary sometimes, depending on how you do it, but just white void, and you can see things very clearly. It's not as scary. But when you see something in the shadows and you see something kind of like, doing its thing, right? It's like, it's in the atmosphere that it needs to be in. It's in the tone that it needs to be in. You have a better understanding of what this thing is. You know what I mean? So whenever I'm designing, I really always try to show it in context. The only time I won't show it in context is if the design is already done and I'm told to like just make it for the modeler, right? Because as concept artists, our job is to design things for 2 different types of people, right? The first type of people is directors, is for your leads, your art directors, your showrunners, whoever. You're trying to inspire direction because they're like, hey, we need an idea for this thing. We need an idea for, A, B, and C thing, right? So what you do is you're like, cool, let me make a design and let me kind of inspire you, right? It's like, let me show you what this could look like, right? No one's building it. No one's doing anything with this. It's really just a proof of concept, right? And we like, or I like to call that inspiring direction, right? That's the first set of people, because they're not really going to build this exact painting, but they are going to approve it from here, right? But then once it's approved, this now goes to a modeler. But the conundrum is you can't really design something that's like half in shadow, or they can't really build something when it's like half in shadow. They can't see any of it, you know? So the whole point is when it gets to them, they need to see the turnaround because they're going to build it. They need to see every angle of it, right? So if I were to hand this to a modeler, then, you know, I would just, you know, hand them the model or render it 4 times, whatever that means, right? And so we oftentimes kind of mix up the reason why you know, we do a certain painting. We have to know who this is for. If this is for production and you're like, you know, you're working on a thing or whatever, right? Do whatever they need you to do, right? That's the most important thing. But if you're doing this for your portfolio, right, you're trying to inspire people to hire you, right? So you want to kind of hit the inspiration side just a little bit harder. And you know, even in the Livestream Plus feedback, you know, I was telling everybody whether they do it or not, who knows? But I told everybody, hey, we want to set this up in the angle, in the view that it's meant to be seen, right? Because no one, absolutely nobody gives a shit about, you know, turnarounds. You know what I mean? Like they need it for work, absolutely, right? I'm not saying that it's not useful, but no one really cares. They just want to see that you can do it, but then they just move on from there. You know what I mean? So you want to set up your image to say the most it can say without you being there. Because now I have the model, I can just screenshot it and then, you know, kind of add in whatever changes I need. And then we go from there, right? So just kind of remember that. It sells a lot harder whenever you have things in context. It looks better, right? This dune buggy looks better because it's doing a thing. It kind of has a moment, you know, whether it's the best idea in the world, probably not, right? But the point is we see it in context doing its thing, and it inspires a little bit more than just the pure turnaround. You know what I mean? The turnaround is just for you, in my opinion. This is strictly all my opinion, but it really does come down to the turnaround is just for you. It's just for you to kind of like show whoever that, oh yeah, I can do this thing, right? But in reality, it's like they don't really need that. They don't they don't need to see that in a portfolio because your portfolio isn't going to be built by a modeler. You know what I mean? They're just gonna see it. They're gonna be like, oh wow, you can do turnarounds. We need turnarounds. That's perfect. You're hireable. And then, you know, we just go off from there. You know what I mean? I have a bunch of students that we kind of chat about portfolios and even like some people that kind of got their first jobs, right? And then I've had a couple friends go, oh yeah, you know, they really liked my stuff. They liked my keyframes and they liked my inspiration paintings, my loose thumbnails, whatever it is, right? They always like those. They always say, wow, this stuff is beautiful. We love this stuff. And they hire you, right? But then when you get on the job, you're doing props, you're doing turnarounds, you know, you're doing the easy basic stuff, right? Because that's what they need. That's what production is. And so, you know, if you can't do that stuff, right? That's where you want to really kind of like make sure that you have that skill. But you don't necessarily need to show it for everything, right? Because once I see one turnaround, I can basically assume that you know how to do a turnaround. You know what I mean? Like if someone sees this turnaround in my portfolio, they're like, cool, you can do turnarounds. Great. Now it's like, can you inspire them to hire you? Because, you know, they're hiring you for your ideas, right? They're calling you up because they're like, hey, we like your paintings. There's something very special about the way you convey ideas on a page. And we want that for our project, right? But if it's like, if the best thing you can do is convey an idea in a rotated space, right? It's just the shapes that they're looking at. They're not looking at the context of this idea. You know what I mean? And it sells just a little bit harder whenever they, when they know kind of like what this is about and what it means. You know what I'm saying? So. So I feel like I'm rambling. I guess that's what this is. I mean, we're on episode 12, bro. If you don't know that this is what I do, clearly you haven't been watching me. Clearly. Sick. Let's go, dude. I don't need that one. I need it. Just kidding. Yeah, it makes layers. It's like an onion. Let's see. Take that out of the sky. Right. Look at that. I painted that sky from scratch. I did it 100%. I'm a good boy. I don't cheat. You know what I mean? Because they're going to be like, dude, you painted all that in like an hour? You're like, yeah, dude. That's exactly what I did. Because this is why you pay me the big bucks. Oh, bro. Look at that. So I'm not going to do like... So whenever we're getting in, like I'm kind of like setting up the atmosphere and tone right now. Oopsies. Whenever I'm not gonna be like, I guess going too deep into like painting the background stuff. We've already seen that a couple times. I am gonna kind of zoom in on this prop and just kind of take care of that. I do want to get my setting down first, and then we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, soft light. It's not softing, or it's too soft. Overlay? No. Hard light. That's not bad. That is not bad at all. Oh, that's too purple. Blues? Yeah, buddy. Let's go. That's cool. I dig that. All right. What the? That didn't work. There you go. Sick. Okay, so first step done, right? Pretty easy, right? Generally speaking, a pretty simple idea, right? We have camera doing a thing in a space, you know? It's like very simple, and it really doesn't take much. I didn't make another car. This is just part of the project. And if you plan your projects accordingly, right? And that's, I feel like one of the bigger keys. I feel like, because I used to teach ENT1, which is basically a portfolio level class. And we kind of talk about some things. And the way I go about my projects, I try to be as efficient as possible. How many of you have ever designed like a weapon or a vehicle or a thing that, you know, like, wow, I made this car, great. And then your keyframe is like a whole different scene that doesn't even require the car. You know what I mean? Like that happens all the time. But, you know, you really want to be as efficient as possible because, you know, now we have, like, if I look at the different demos, I'm like, wow, yeah, there's this photographer, you know, it's the game where you're going around taking pictures of creatures and they're like these kind of World War II, you know, kind of mechanical, like monster type things, pretty sick. You're driving around in this dune buggy, right? You're kind of like tearing around in like this all-terrain vehicle. There's like a boat version, which I'd probably show, right? I'd do another version of that. There's maybe a flying version, but I'm trying to show off the dune buggy version right now. And then you're like, dude, yeah, they're taking a picture of it. And this is the camera that they use, right? We're kind of zooming in each time. And each one of these has a model, has a turnaround, has, you know, sheets and stuff like that we can kind of make this a little bit better. So you can see how this project starts building upon itself, right? And as you look at one image, it leads into the next, to the next, to the next. And it shows that you have a very linear process that is effective, right? Because, you know, in production, this is what we do, right? At the end of the day, when you're assigned a level, right, for a game, or you're just assigned a location for a movie or an animated film, they tell you like, hey, can you design this location? And you're like, hell yeah. And then, you know, you design everything for it. Like literally you go in there and you go in there and you figure out what the blades of grass looks like. I had to figure out what snow looks like in this one location, right? It's a lot of that stuff. And the more, I guess, deep you can kind of get with your designs, the better off a lot of these things kind of like tend to go. You know what I mean? So pretty cool stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Sick. Right. Now we have to paint. Now I can't rely on the idea of I have a model. This grid's a little weird. So it's weird because this car is kind of off kilter, so I couldn't follow the car, but I had to follow the camera itself, and that was really, really awkward. Because like the car is kind of tilted and slanted. So I leveled the camera off and I'm making the grid based off of that. But now, because of that, my car is kind of off. So I'm going to have to be a big boy and figure out my perspective on things. Nah, I want that darker. Oopsies. Whoop. There you go. Sickness. Cool. Fix that edge. So the first thing I'm going to do, I have my camera. I'm going to grab this actually. I'm going to grab all this, duplicate it down, turn that into an asset. Boom. Asset, not assert. Asset. Bam. Turn that off. Now I can be as destructive as I want. All right. So we have a face here and I want this face to be a little bit more, you know, I guess emoting just a little, because right now it's like kind of blank stare, which, you know, because it's just a bunch of circles, right? So now I'm trying to figure out like, how do I make this feel like it is emoting? How do I make this, like, what kind of emotion do I want to hit? And I'm kind of thinking like, I want that like super focused look that, like, you know, when like old people or like I think I'm always thinking like my Asian dad or whatever, you know what I mean? Or I guess my dad, and I'm Asian, but you know, I'm always trying to think like, you know, what kind of face did he make? I remember my dad would like, because I used to, my dad or my parents, they own convenience stores. So I used to go around with them like as basically free labor, right? I don't say it like that, but you know, they weren't exactly paying me for a while. So we go around and then I'd help my dad and he'd fix things, right? Because he's, you know, I mean, he owned the store, but he was too cheap to like call anybody. So he fixed everything himself. And he'd have a cigarette in his mouth and he'd be like all focused trying to figure out what it is. And I remember it because I'd be sitting there holding the flashlight, but like sitting there watching him and it's like that furrowed brow and the cigarette's like, they're not smoking it. It's just in their mouth. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when people like thinking that they have like that pen in their hand, right? Or the pen in their mouth or the pencil in their mouth and just like thinking their focus is all there. So that's kind of what I'm trying to hit with this guy, right? Because, you know, that's what he's doing. He's trying to get the shot. You know, he's trying to make sure he kind of nails focus for all this stuff, right? So I'm just gonna get rid of that. Copied it. At this point, it's separate. Sorry, I'm still coughing from being sick, but I'm not sick anymore. I'm just coughing a lot, which really sucks. But this is separate. And I'm just going to start messing with it. I'm going to save this piece out so it's an asset. So if I mess up, I can kind of do it again. But I'm just going to take this, just go to warp. Because the way I thought about this is like, I wanted this to feel, I wanted like whenever I designed this, I wanted the actual animation to be, I guess, a little bit more, I guess, flexible in some areas, right? Because this is a very hard surface prop. There's, you know, there's a design here that's really inflexible. It's a bunch of metal pieces, and you know the world itself doesn't really kind of animate like that. So I wanted to give it that ability to animate in some areas, right? So I made this kind of like screen-esque kind of eye shape, very simple, but you know we can kind of manipulate it to kind of give us the idea that we're looking for. You know what I mean? So like, you know, I don't know. He's like squinting or he's like really focusing. We're trying to get that like wrinkle in the brow. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get that like, I don't know, that like big, that fold or that kind of like dip that kind of happens, right? So like, I don't know if you look at this, I want this. Let's not do it in red. What do you think? I don't like, you know what I mean? It's like kind of goes like that, right? I just want that feeling of like he's kind of like, what the hell? You know, he's kind of like looking, squinting, closing an eye, and you know, it's kind of getting there, right? So if we can kind of like warp it to kind of get something a little bit closer, and then we can, you know, just from there kind of like figure things out. Oh, he's like a little more serious because they're always like mad. They look mad. They're not mad, but they look mad. You know what I mean? Should I flip that? What side opens when you smoke? That's down. Is that down? Yeah, right side's down. Maybe. Hold up. Do I like that? Oh, that's cool. I like that. I like the I was trying to figure out what side kind of goes up. You know what I mean? And we'll fix this later. We'll get this. We'll make this look nice and spiffy. in the Discord, Ramik said, can you just describe every Asian dad? Yeah, man. I mean, that's it, dude. Like, but that's the whole point, right? Something that I really try to hit in every single design or every single class that I teach or whatever it is, it's relate stuff back, right? Like, it's something where when we design, we're not just designing some random thing, right? We're trying to give the audience, like, you're trying to link with the audience in some sort of way. The best designs say so much more than what they actually are. You know what I mean? Like, it's more than the shapes. It's more than the form language, right? Because, you know, you want to create something that the audience can relate to. They're like, oh yeah, my dad's like that. You know what I mean? Because yeah, they're all the same. They have the lucky hair, you know, on their neck. I don't like a lot of Asian. I'm describing Asian dads because that's what my dad has. He has a lucky hair. He has a mole on his neck, and he's a lucky hair right there. He calls it his lucky hair. But like, it's the same idea. They all do it. And when you hit that idea of like relatability with your audience, dude, you can do so much with that. You know, the audience, I guess, kind of gets on board with your ideas just a little bit more, right? And like, this is the character trait of like an Asian dad. Cause you know, I was looking at a dude that, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, he reminds me of my dad, you know what I mean? And so whenever we're doing this, we really want to kind of understand like what the hell just happened? There we go. We really want to understand like, what are we trying to emote, right? Like, you know, cause this goes deeper than the shapes that are being made. This goes into the realm of like, you know, like relatability, right? It's not just some robot, right? It's not just some like sidekick character. It's a personality. And if you hit a real personality, people love that, dude. Like, dude, they kind of, because it feels right. It feels like it kind of creates this emotional response with the audience, right? And that's what we want. And this happens with location, like characters, especially, right? Because, you know, for those that are getting into character design and, you know, want to kind of really hit good characters, the faster you get away from form language, the better off you're going to be, right? And it sounds funny. I catch a lot of like students in my classes and stuff. They're like, oh, I'm designing this character. I'm like, cool. So what's happening here? They're like, oh yeah, he's wearing like military clothes, and you know, he or she, right? They kind of like they have this gun, and there's this form language that I'm trying to introduce about. And then I go, but who is it? Like, who is this person? You know? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's a character. It's a person. This person exists in our world in some sort of way, right? There's an idea here that we need to understand. It's like, this is a person. There's a person that puts on clothes. There's a soldier here. There's a certain personality. He has PTSD. He drinks every time he's not in combat. You know what I mean? There's all these little things that you really want to kind of comprehend about your designs, because it matters, right? It's these little ideas that really do go a long way. Because at the end of the day, it's a character design, character first. It's a person, it's someone that exists. So you kind of want to really hit those kind of motifs that people can relate to, right? And then the form language stuff comes second, right? I think especially concept artists, I feel we lean so much into form language, where it's like, you know, there's like really getting those squares looking consistent, really getting those shapes looking the same, right? But in reality, the designs don't mean anything. It's just a bunch of bullshit on the page, and like, nobody cares, you know? Nobody cares about form language. No audience cares about form language. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna look at it and be like, wow, that's a cool camera. And then I'm gonna be like, did you notice the form language of the robot is different from the form language of the camera? And they'll be like, the fuck are you talking about, man? Who cares? It's just a cool camera, and he has a cigarette in his mouth. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't care. You know, how many parents did you ever watch Star Wars? We're like, dude, the Greeble on the Millennium Falcon looks dope. Like, it's like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, who cares? Nobody's looking at that, you know? And so when we design, we need to keep that in mind, right? It's definitely something that if it's off, it will be off. People will riot. I don't know. But if it's on, nobody notices. If it looks good, nobody cares. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what we're trying to make sure that we hit, right? Because if it stands out too much, you know, you have an issue. But if you're like, if it looks solid, right, then yeah, great. So I'm trying to like figure out like how much is too much, right? Because so I'm thinking like, because he's kind of squinting, and I'm trying to create these crow's feet. He's a little older, right? So he's like, he has the crow's feet on his eyes, or maybe there's like bags or something, you know. And I'm trying to create that like that furrow in the brow, and like just trying to see like how much we can get away with before it just starts becoming too cartoony, you know. I feel like the metal bending right here doesn't really quite work, right? Just because it just doesn't look right. But maybe I can do something with like, you know, the whites, because I think like the white section right there looks okay, where it's like it feels like lights or some sort of like screen, you know what I mean? Which I'm pretty cool with. But yeah, we're just trying to figure that out right now. What is this? What kind of music is this, dude? I think my phone was like playing some other, like, it kind of like auto played to the next thing. Let me fix that. There you go. There you go. Much better. You guys have any questions at all? You guys want to talk about anything? I have some stuff I want to talk about, but we'll save that for a little bit later. Kylo Legend says, I don't know why it's so hard sometimes to give characters more personality. Give a character more personality. You know, as somebody that is not a character designer, yeah, man, it's hard as hell. It's difficult, right? It's something where like it's like, you know, because I took a character class. I mean, I was forced to take a character class at Noman when I was first in school, right? And then, I don't know, I didn't like the teacher that much, but he was very much like, he'd look at my work and he'd go, there's no character here. And I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean, man? You know what I mean? Like, cause I was like 1 year into like school at that point. So I took the class, and because, you know, that was just part of the curriculum, and I get the crit, and it was like every week. And I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all, you know? And like, because, you know, what does that quantify to? You know what I'm saying? Like, that could fucking mean anything, dude. You know, I mean, as a better designer now, yeah, you know, I know what that means, but, you know, at the time I was like, I didn't know, you know, I don't know what they're trying to imply there. But now at my age, or I guess at my skill level now, I'm like, oh yeah, because it's not relatable. There's not like, cause you know, when you design a character, right? You're not let's say like you're designing an old lady. You're not just designing some old lady. You're designing your grandma. You're designing, you know, your aunt or whoever, right? We're not just like putting marks on a page and making some generic lady, right? You're trying to channel like an idea, because even though we all have different grandmas or different parents or different, you know, people in our lives, there's a general feeling that all of them kind of give us. You know what I mean? Like, it's not exactly the same, but there's a feeling. That's why, like, when you see like online of like, you know, things that happen culturally, where you know, like there's always like in like, you know, Latin countries, it's always like the grandma or the mom chasing you with a chancla, you know what I mean, like the sandal, you know what I mean, there's like that's a thing. It's like, yeah, I'm not Latin, right? I'm not from of Spanish descent, right? But my mom did that shit to me all the time. You know what I mean? That coat hangers, this and that. I was a shitty kid. Like, let's be real. It wasn't exactly uncalled for. Let's be honest. But, right? We all kind of had that feeling where your parents are just kind of after you because you did something stupid. You know what I mean? And so, because of that, it's something that we can kind of relate to as humans, right? And so when you're hitting the personality of a character, what we're really doing is you're trying to find this relationship between, I guess the audience and your character. Don't design, some random old lady. Design your grandma. Design somebody that, is particular to your story, because chances are we all have somebody like that. You know what I mean? And it just makes your design so much better. Nobody, I guess, like with designs and stuff, it's really hard to relate when it's so generic, but when you have somebody that's like, somebody that when you're referencing somebody very specific, it really does go a long way, so. But again, let's be real. I'm not a character designer, so I'm not saying that this is law, but I have heard things from people that know things. So, so take that with a grain of salt. Take all of this with a grain of salt. Let's be real, because half the stuff I say on here, it's just me just bullshitting around, right? You know what I mean? No. See, it's like I'm trying to emphasize this brow bend a little bit more. And it's like, I don't know if that's working. Let's see. All right. Step one, right? Kind of done. We'll come back to it. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so I'm gonna kind of go in here, and I'm just gonna start making stuff look good. So lock that up. Let's go here. It's gonna go. Oops. There we go. I want black. No, I want gray. Gray's good. Gray's a good color for that, right? It's like on fire-ish. Right. X. Default. Oh, no. X. And then color pick. Kylo Legend says, that's some good advice. Thank you. No, thank you.
Hey, Kenny, I got a question.
What's up, bro?
So like in terms of whoops, sorry, muted myself. I'm back. Maybe there's more specific to kind of what some of the stuff I'm trying to learn and want to do from some of the people that inspire me. But have you, I guess, tackled like in concept, not like animating, but for instance, like on his camera character, like different expressions that you have. Would you ever do something like a GIF or some other simple animated way of it, or do you just do like a sheet of expressions, or
it depends?
You know what I mean? Like, how would you tackle that?
So for me, I would probably do is like do a flat sheet of like these faces, for example, like just kind of experiment and see what happens, and then just warp them in perspective, right? So just do them flat and then put them in perspective on like a final painting. So I would do this entire painting first, and then like show them, oh yeah, this is when he's happy, this is when he's sad, and make the couple changes that you're kind of thinking, you know what I mean? But the whole idea would be you have I guess a general kind of template, right? Because it's a proof of concept at that point. Really what we're looking for is like, what could this look like? Because the animators and stuff are gonna really like kind of figure a lot of that stuff out. You know what I mean? In terms of like how, so you could do this in any way that you want, and something that everybody should know, like everybody should know this. In production, oftentimes they won't tell you what they're looking for, right? They won't go like, not oftentimes, but like I say a good half of the time, right? They'll be like, oh, hey, can you give us expressions for this character? Cool. You know what I mean? And if you like did it well, if you just did a flat sheet of animated like faces, right? Probably work, right? As long as it hit the needs of like what the production is looking for. If you did like an animated move, whereas like you want to show a very specific character quirk that this character does, right? Cool. You know what I mean? Like they're pretty lenient when it comes to like things that they need. Just because as long as it like, does what we need it to do, you're probably going to be fine. You know what I mean? But it's like really kind of knowing that, like understanding like, oh, what that even entails. You know what I'm saying? Because that's where you're kind of getting into like senior level where it's like, oh yeah, so I'll do, 10 character sheets or 10 character emotes, or I'll do a turnaround or whatever. Or like because I did a ground plane for one of my jobs before, where the ground plane is animating, right? Where like it's doing something. I did this entire thing, and instead of like showing them in like I guess a flat version of like it kind of mid transition, I just did a GIF. So I just animated it. It was like super sloppy. It wasn't exactly like a work of art, right? This isn't like I wasn't doing Studio Ghibli animations, you know what I mean? But it was good enough for the animators and directors to look at it and be like, okay, I get what you're doing there. And then they can kind of take it over. Cause that's, I'm just trying to show them like, hey, this is kind of what I was thinking. And then from there, they do the rest, right? Because at the end of the day, you're the concept artist. You don't have to like fully map out every single motion because that's their job, You just have to do enough to where they kind of get what you mean. And then from there, it's, they'll figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Thanks.
Yeah. Great question, dude. Cool. Spending a lot of time on this cigarette, by the way. Let's do some more damage. Let's actually like hit stuff that actually feels more impactful. Like this highlight's super strong. I really don't want that to be, I guess, the main thing. You know what I'm saying? But I'll keep like that. Lip right there. Oh, a cool thing that I did, I guess I thought was cool. If you guys think it's cool, who knows? But there's a cut line on the top of this head, and you can kind of see it on the top right over there. But like what I did was I wanted this to feel like a forehead, right? So I took, I'll do this in green. There you go. I took the line here, this little like, the seam line of like the case essentially, right? And I just beveled it in and then made it a little bit wider. And the cool part is when you beveled it, or when I beveled it, it's, it kind of goes in this way and then it goes back. So it kind of feels like that corner of the forehead. And I just kind of like try to include that. And it's just little design cues where it's like, it doesn't have to make perfect sense as to why that's there, right? But as long as you have a reason why that even exists, you know what I mean? Like as long as you have something where it's like, oh, that kind of works with the idea, right? It'll go a lot further than like random cut lines or random things, because oftentimes, we get designs where it's like, oh yeah, what's that thing? And they're like, oh, I just did a thing, you know what I mean? And that's usually not a good answer, right? Because there's like, the whole idea would be, if you're going to design something that has some sort of like, if someone's going to make it, they're going to put production value into this thing, right? They're going to spend time and make it. Chances are, you're going to be spending a lot of money or, wasting a lot of time trying to do this thing that, that you just kind of randomly thought up on a whim, right? And so you kind of want to have a reason to do these things. And it's not always, but like the whole idea would be, when you're designing, really know why these cut lines exist. Really have a reason for some of these ideas. Because if you don't, then it comes back to, it could be anything. It could be anything that you want it to be. But if you had a reason to do that, then now it has to be that, right? If they like the idea, of course. But the whole point is really try to think through your concepts, because they're going to ask you, right? Because in production, they mull through every single thing. They go through every little idea that kind of happens. Like, oh, why is this panel black versus his red? It looks cleaner as a red thing. It's like, oh no, because I made it for his hairline. Like, oh shit, that's dope. You know what I mean? And they might kind of grow on that idea and kind of push that further. You know what I mean? So little things like that really do make your concepts that much better. And this is why, like, whenever I'm talking and a lot of my demos, a lot of my classes and stuff, I always say, like, be a person, right? It's like, like, be somebody, like, exist, like, because people that don't don't go outside, don't go experience life in any sort of way, right? Oftentimes, they don't have these life experiences to pull upon, and so when it comes to making ideas, it's like, oh, I didn't even know that existed, or I didn't even know you could do things like that. That's why it's like watch movies, understand designs, like, because if I didn't watch Finding Dory, for example, right, I might not have come to that conclusion of having, you know, that hairline idea, right? And I've done that a couple different times, not even just with like, you know, the stuff that I'm doing in this live stream, but even like class stuff, work stuff, whatever. I've shown that to like a lot of my students, and it's like, I mean, it's for me when I first saw it, I was like, oh shit, you know, I was like an earlier level concept artist at the time, and I just didn't quite understand like some of these things, you know, and it kind of goes past a lot of those form language ideas, you know. I mean, it's tied in, it really is, but in reality, it's like all these little ideas really do go, you know, really do go a long way. And if you can like tie these experiences into your concepts, it's everything. You know, it makes your ideas relatable, understandable, and, you know, that experience just so much better, you know? Because if you don't really have anything to offer, you know, why would they hire you? You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just, you're not really a person. You know what I'm saying? I don't say it like that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you don't really exist. You're just kind of there, you know? Cause like
That's something I kind of think about.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
What's up, Hunter? No, go ahead.
No, just to, you know, riff on that instead of leaving you hanging.
Yeah, no, hit it.
I think about that a lot actually, where I feel like I don't mean this like a BM, right? But like Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings because he went through hell in a war, right?
Yeah.
In my generation, it's like yeah, we have a lot of stuff to deal with for sure, but it's different, and I feel like it's kind of harder to get some like life experiences in some ways.
Yep.
So I'm like constantly trying to be like, all right, this isn't much, but I'm gonna go out of my comfort zone on this and like, you know, go do some crazy outdoor thing or just see something weird I probably never would have like seen before, just to try and like some of that juice back in.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's so much inbred art right now.
Yeah.
And it's still really cool, but you can only like resample Ghost in the Shell so many times, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it, dude. Like, you know, you can only like, okay, so if you think about it, right? Because it's all the same ideas, right? Like when people are like, oh yeah, you know, when you think sci-fi, it's like Blade Runner, you know, Fifth Element, you know, Ghost in the Shell, cool, you know. And then like somebody throws out something kind of weird, you're like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like it's just it hits different, you know. It's like, you know, it's a new idea, or even like referencing things that aren't sci-fi, but taking the same mentality of it. It's like, it's these things that really do go such a long way. If you're ever feeling like you're lacking ideas, right? Oftentimes it really does come down to like, you're probably not doing much, you know, because a lot of these ideas that I kind of come up with is just things that I do, you know what I mean? Like the buggy idea that we had, right? Like a lot of those things is just stuff that I saw on the internet / saw at the track or like whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's just because I was digging into a hobby, you know? Same with, you know, a lot of like this stuff. Like I was just into a lot of these things. And then now we're doing camera stuff because fucking guess what? Like fucking, I like cameras, you know what I mean? It's just, especially when you're doing your personal project and it goes just a little bit deeper. You know, it's these little ideas that kind of like infiltrate and make you like just that much different. And in a setting, especially in a professional setting like now, what makes you different is literally the difference between being employed and being not employed, right? That's why like a lot of these questions of like, oh yeah, you know, what hobbies do you like? What things do you do, right? They're so important because if you're not a person, right? I don't want to say like not a person, but if you're somebody that just kind of stays inside and does art all day, you can't contribute ideas. Yeah, your quality might be amazing. You might be able to paint like crazy. You might be able to outclass me or whoever by miles, right? But if your ideas suck, what's the point? You know what I mean? Because yeah, your castle might look better than my castle, right? I'm not saying I'm like better than whoever, but the whole point is I can paint a castle too. You know what I mean? And yeah, the quality might not be exactly the same, but if my idea is better, that's all that matters. Because in reality, none of our paintings are actually going to make it into the final product, generally speaking, right? In a normal setting, because a modeler needs to go make it. You know, the quality is gonna be accounted for. You know, we already have the quality bar kind of set up. You know what I mean? Because, you know, it's a production. They make it. They don't take my painting and just throw it into into the game or whatever. They have to make the thing. And so when they make it, that quality really goes away. There's really no difference at that point. And that's some of the issues that you'll kind of start finding yourself. And that's why a big thing that I preach about, or like just bitch about, whatever you want to call it, whatever side you're coming from, it really is 3D doesn't matter, right? Because the thought process on getting to this idea has nothing to do with 3D. I did it in 3D, but it doesn't really matter because the ideation that we did, the variation that we did, the studies that we did, that's just a thought process. I do this in 2D, I do this in 3D, and the results are basically the same. Yeah, it's a little bit easier in 3D in some instances. But if you can't design in 2D, or if you don't understand how to formulate an idea just in general, you know, you just have three-dimensional trash. You know what I mean? Like, I can see the trash from all angles, you know, HD, fully rendered. You know what I'm saying? Like, cool, man. You know, it's great that we can enjoy this bad idea from all angles. You know what I mean? Like, that's really what happens. And so whenever we're designing, right, no matter what tool we use, we're designers. We have to design something. We have to create something that's worth pursuing, right? Doesn't matter what form it comes in. Doesn't matter what, package that you put it in, right? Because you have people like Jamie Jones, Craig Mullins, this and that, right? That, you know, dominate the 2D space. In reality, they're not really using 3D. They might be, but not like some people. Like, I have students that outclass me in 3D by like miles, like incredible 3D stuff. But doesn't mean the idea is good. It doesn't mean that idea is inherently better than kind of like what somebody else can do. It just means that it looks better in that end result. And so now it's like, well, what are you actually saying with that design? You know what I mean? Sorry, we're getting kind of ranty.
I'm just trying to provide some fodder.
No, dude, that's good. I appreciate it. If all these people in the Discord are too shy to say anything. I don't want to call you guys out like that, but you know. Oh, I did have some questions. Sorry, we're at 8:17, guys. We're 45 minutes away from game time. Where is it at? Boom, boom, boom. All right, so something that comes up a lot, especially like this past kind of round of Livestream Plus crits and stuff that we did, is that there's a tendency to design piece by piece, right? And I did this all the time. I got shot for it like a million times. I'm not even gonna lie, because like you would do something where, you know, you're just like, I'm just designing, right? I'll just be like, they'll be like, hey, we need a design for this castle or whatever, right? And then freaking, I would do a design and I would submit it for, you know, for approval or to look at, or just the first pass at it. And they'll be like, what's this? You know, I'm like, oh, it's the castle. Like, I mean, that's the door to the castle, or that's the, you know what I mean? Or that's like one building. Where's the rest of it? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get there. I just want to see if the form language was looking good or whatever. You know, very, very good intentions, right? But the issue is, I was designing because I knew what I wanted to do, right? I knew that when I saw it, like what direction I wanted to go, right? Because, you know, it's my mind, it's my brain that I'm using to kind of get me to that to get me to that spot, right? But the issue was my leads didn't know, right? Because they look at it and they're like, I don't know what the fuck this kid's about to do. You know what I mean? And the issue was I would design something and then they'd be like, okay, cool. All right. move on to the next thing, and then we design the other piece, and they don't fit together. Like it doesn't look good. Like each piece looks good together, it doesn't look right, and that happens all the time. Like I shit you not, like that happens every single time. If you don't design something together, it generally speaking doesn't really work together that well, right? Because unless you're like just that good. If you're that good, it doesn't really matter. You know, you do whatever you want. But for those of us that are normal, you know, when you're designing, you really want to show the leads or whoever the whole package because they need to see it all together. That way they can like, oh yeah, that head looks good, you know, or that lens, you know, let's talk about the camera, right? That lens looks okay, right? And it's like, cool. Like, even though it's like low quality, right? Where it's like, oh, you know, it's missing screws, it's missing textures, it's missing things, right? It doesn't fully look 100%, but the whole point is it's most of the way there, right? It's 70%, and there's no really surprises because you really can't mess it up from this point on. If I handed this to anybody and was like, hey, can you render this out and make this look better? Chances are they'd probably be able to do it. You know what I mean? Chances are they're going to be like, oh yeah, I can do that, you know, because it's not that hard, right? But the whole point is you need to kind of show your leads what you're thinking, and because they can't read your mind, so they're going to need to kind of see what you're thinking before you do it, and it logically makes sense. And you'd be surprised how often it happens. I'm not talking about anybody in particular when I say this, but it is something where it's like, you know, you'd be surprised how often this happens in studios and productions, and especially in classes, just because it's very easy to want to break things down piece by piece, where it's like, oh, hey, I have this idea, I have this cool thing, and I'm going to design it piece by piece. I'm going to design the camera strap, and then design the lens, and then I'm going to design the camera, and I'm going to put it all together. But the issue is, let's say it took 1 day. Let's say you have 3 days total, right? You have 3 days to make this design happen, which is probably pretty standard. But you design the strap, cool. Like that looks sick, right? Cool. You design the lens. That's day 2. Now you're on day 2. You design the lens. Oh, that's cool. And then you design the body and put them all together. And they're like, this doesn't match at all. The form language is all off, this and that. You're 3 days in and it's due. And one of the elements that took one whole day to do doesn't work. And so now you're behind. Versus if you kind of did a rough pass on all of it on the first day, then the next 2 days, you can just work on like the screws, the texture, the decals, all those stuff to kind of make it look, you know, better, right? More detail. But the detail isn't what's going to carry the image. It's the idea as a whole, you know? So you want to kind of design in context. You want to design with the whole idea in mind. That way you can kind of, you know, get things approved a little bit easier, right? Because I've like submitted stuff where like they'll see it on the first, let's say like the first round. They're like, oh, that's pretty cool, because their mind, they kind of know what they're looking at, right? They're like in their high-end art director, creative director mind, right? Clearly way better than me. They're like, they're finishing it already. They're like, oh, I can see where he's going with this. But then they find out, no, I wasn't going that direction at all, you know? And that's the issue, because now we're behind. Now, you know, the schedule is kind of off. There's a lack of clarity on like direction and all that. And it really does kind of like mess things up, you know? So it's a very easy trap to fall into. And whenever we're working, you kind of want to see everything together as soon as you can. The faster you can show, you know, whoever your lead is or whatever, like the direction that you need to go in, the better off you're gonna be. You know what I mean? Just because, like, you know, if you don't show them early, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. You know what I mean? Sorry. Oopsies. Brush. Boom. Let's make this sick. So like something that I'm doing here, right? I'm just painting, you know, I'm just kind of going in, making things work the way I need them to work, adding things the way I need to add, just, you know, figuring things out. You know, it's easy though, because at this point, the cool part about 3D and something that like I do enjoy about it is like, you know, we can kind of mess with things, we can kind of see things in all different angles and kind of, you know, I guess figure things out that way. You know what I mean? But, you know, really now it's like, because I'm not that good at rendering, right? I guess like my render settings are kind of weird or whatever, right? Like my textures aren't applied, whatever's happening. I do have to kind of go in and, you know, paint stuff. And so now it's really just trying to paint things down, make things feel like a little more unified and a little more kind of, you know, I guess cohesive, you know what I mean? And that's going to help, my painting just feel a little less 3D, because something that happens a lot is, you know, you do a 3D model, right? And then it's like, oh yeah, cool. And if you don't know how to truly model, you're going to have to paint eventually, you know, because, you know, if you're not one of those people that like go all the way until like, those people that like just take it 1,000% in model and then just like add atmosphere or add a blur or stuff here and there, right? It just kind of like, you know, you got to do something to it. You got to paint, you got to fix it. And so now it really is just me just fixing things. Be like, oh, that's weird. You know, let's kind of add some of this, add some of that. And the more you kind of do in 3D, the better off you'll kind of be. But, you know, you still have to paint eventually. You still got to do something to it. So, you know, just know how. Sick. There's like I think something I find really hard though is like I don't really know how to like take this to 100%. Sometimes when I first start, like when I do a painting, like I kind of know where I'm going, right? I know exactly what pieces I need, everything that like kind of you know, I guess go into that painting, and I'll just kind of start running, right? I think with 3D, I kind of find myself like having to stumble around. Like I'm just making paint strokes, I'm just fixing things up until I start finding issues where I'm like, oh, okay, I get what's happening here. And then it kind of like falls into place really nicely, you know? But yeah, it's a weird process. I think for me, and that probably shows like my lack of, I guess, experience in 3D, right? Where it's like, you know, there's things that I don't quite know yet. Like it's not fully integrated into my process. I kind of feel like I'm I'm kind of like forcing it in. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. It's not as smooth as, say, like my 2D process, where like, you know, when we saw the first demo with the centipede thing, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you know, from start to finish, it's clear. We know what we're doing. Now it's like, you know, where do we need brushstrokes? Where do I need to add just a little bit of information to make this feel like it's happening, or something's going on here, right? I'm trying to like get this highlight feeling just a little bit better. Let's see here. Yo, what's up, Case? How's it going, dude? We just be streaming, dog. Julia is asking a question in the Discord. Let's see. Looking back, what things would you have changed in how you dealt with a layoff? Ooh, either mental or like communication wise, like are cold emails, messages ever beneficial? Nice. Because that's actually something I wanted to talk about. So, as we all know, right, there's a bunch of layoffs not that long ago, right, at certain big studios. It sucks. It really does. It is something that it's a terrible time, just regardless for anybody, right? I mean, especially for the people that actually work at those places, but you know, in particular for everybody, because now not only is this one person out of work, right, but now you have an employed person out of work, which means they're probably highly skilled and they're out of work. And so now the job pool gets a little bit harder, right? And you know, I'm not like shaming them or anything like that. It's not like that, but it is something where it's a hard time, not just for the people that are let go, but it's also a hard time for the people that are currently still looking, because now you have to compete with somebody that worked at Riot, right? I mean, they're kind of known for being good at things, some of them, right? I'm sure there's people that slip through the crack. I don't know. But the whole point is there's somebody there that isn't there anymore, and they're now looking for work in the same job field that you're looking, right? And that sucks, right? That's hard. I mean, it sucks for everybody, but particularly for people that are struggling to find work in general, the workforce just got the job search just got a little bit harder, right? But with dealing with layoffs, it's it's hard, mainly because a lot of people are in the same boat as you, right? Because it's not just like you left and now you're the only one looking for work, right? It's a whole bunch of people in the same boat, same qualifications, right? If you got let go off of a team that did a thing, you know what I mean? Like it's the same. It's the same people you were working with that are looking for jobs. So you're all qualified. You know what I mean? And that's scary. The biggest thing that I would say is that you got to be prepared for stuff like that. For everybody, the first thing is, right, be prepared for a layoff. And if you're working at a place that's safe, that is quote unquote safe, right? I just want to break it to you now. You are not safe. There is no such thing as a safety net, right? The only safety net is your skills, is your ability to perform on the job, right? Because there's no company that will go out of their way to keep you on the payroll when it's inconvenient, right? As soon as you're inconvenient to have them payroll, they will get rid of you, right? That's just what it is. It's not personal. It's just the way it is, right? So just understand that if you're not making moves, right? If you're not going from studio to studio, right? If you're not progressing through your career, you're waiting to get fired. I don't want to say it like that. Oops. Sorry, let me grab this texture real quick. I don't want to say it like that, but that's really what it is, right? Because, it's not like, back in the day, whenever they, your parents be like, I worked at this place for 50 years, and I have a nice pension and they love me and, I love them. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. That doesn't happen anymore. That's not really a thing. Not for us at the very least. Because there's people that worked at, let's say Disney for however many years. And that's great. I'm glad that it worked out for them. You know what I mean? That's awesome. But in reality, I mean, I don't know how many people actually do that anymore. You know what I mean? So it's just be prepared, understand that these places, they don't really care about you, And so your job is to find out, how do I prepare myself for things like this? And I would say the biggest thing that I would highly recommend for anybody is, just have plan Bs, have other sources of income, do other things, be performing, because something that happens a lot, especially because I interact with a lot of students that get their first jobs, right? Because as a teacher, right? You know what I mean? I interact with a lot of people that get their first job, and the first thing that I hear as soon as somebody gets their first job, and it's always the case, it's I just want to chill for a second. And I'm like, yes, no, absolutely, please. You worked hard. You got to where you're going, right? I just want to chill. I just want to hang out with friends. I don't want to do art in my spare time. And I get that. I do. I truly do. But what happens when you get let go, right? Because you're going to be, let's say it's your first job, which is even worse, by the way. It's significantly worse than your third or fourth job. The reason for this is because you're going to be working at a place and they're going to have NDA, where it's you can't show anything. You can't post this online, right, for a couple years until the project gets made, right? And so, as a junior, that's the only project you have, or as a first job, that's the only project you have. So what are you going to do? You know what I mean? And so you kind of run into this problem of, I have experience but I was recently let go. And it's you can't show anything technically, right? You can kind of show it in an NDA portfolio, but you can't post it online, so people can't find you organically. You have to find them, and then and be like, hey, I have more work, which, you know, I'm not saying do or don't do that, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? You know, you do whatever you want with that information, but it's really difficult because now you don't have any personal work because you weren't showing anything. You weren't doing anything. And then now you don't have work coming in. So now you're officially a student again. You're a student again, right? And that sucks because now your experience and everything doesn't really quite matter as much just because you're like, cool, you got a first job. Great, man. You know, cool. That's awesome. But I can't see any of the work. You can't show any of the work, whatever, you know, and it's a terrible time. So that's why I always recommend just be doing stuff, right? Do a painting every once in a while. Keep going for the first 3 years after you find your first job. Keep going, because if you don't and you get let go, you're really back at square one, right? And now in a layoff, you're at square one with like 50 other people, you know, and that's even worse, right? Because now you're not the only one that has those qualifications. So that's the biggest thing I would say is really just be prepared for it. Like you can't prepare for a layoff, right? Just because it happens randomly, and I get that. But you can prepare for the inevitable, right? It's called an emergency fund for a reason, right? You don't know when the emergencies happen, but if you didn't make an emergency fund, I mean, that's dumb. You know what I mean? Like you don't know when an earthquake could have happened, but if you don't have an earthquake hit, you know what I mean? It's like, just prepare for the inevitable. Like, you know, it's going to happen. So just prepare for it. Right. And during the times when it's good, right? Apply for jobs, look around, right? There's job postings all the time. There's, you know, things that are going on that, you know, there's always something happening. And oftentimes it's like, oh, I have a job already. I'm good. No. Be looking, try, look around, and you don't even have to apply. But if you do apply, no one even has to know, right? Because if your current job, you know, let's say I said this last week, I'm going to say it again just because people need to hear this. If you're at your current job, right? And, you know, you're applying around, if you don't get the job, the worst case scenario is that you're still employed. You know what I mean? Best case scenario, you moved up, you got a raise, you got a promotion, you work at a better studio, all sorts of things, right? There's only upsides to doing this, but it takes a little bit of effort. And that's the hard part. It's the effort that a lot of people are very nervous because it's like, oh, you know, I don't need to do that. But in reality, as we're all seeing, you really do, because studios don't give a shit about you, right? Because they're going to let you go as soon as they don't need you. So why would you be loyal to anyone like that? You know what I mean? Don't be loyal to a studio. Be loyal to people, right? Be loyal to people that help you out, that do things for you, because that's who's got your back, right? And so, you know, I say all this just because I've seen this time and time again of just apply, just do it, because there's let goes everywhere. There's always layoffs. You know what I mean? It just happens. It's part of the industry right now in particular. Yeah. It's worse than usual, right? But it's not that it's never happened before. There's been layoffs all the time, you know? But you just really got to know that, you know, you just got to be prepared for stuff like that, right? So going back to your question, dealing with layoffs, right? The best thing you can probably do is let people know that you are looking for work, because, you know, sometimes they don't actually know, right? Because I have friends that worked at places that had layoffs, and as far as I was aware, you know, they had jobs, you know what I mean? Like, cause last time I checked, right? And, you know, maybe I could be better at keeping up with some of my friends, but last time I checked, I was, you know, under the impression that they were still working, you know what I mean? So I didn't need to offer them anything because I just thought they had something, you know, and that happens. It really does. Just because, you know, you can't keep up with someone's life 100%, right? So just let people know, let your friend group know. And your friend group is the people that you've gone to school with, the people that have taken classes with you, the people that you hang out with, stuff like that. Because that's who's going to get you out of this, right? In a hiring setting, I think we've talked about this before, but applying through the front door is a fucking nightmare. It is the worst experience humans can go through. I was being dramatic, but you know what I mean? It's a terrible experience. And our industry should, I'm going to be honest, should be ashamed of what they make people go through, right? Just to try to get hired, essentially. I don't know how it's going to be better. I, talked to a recruiter about that one, but the way it's now is not, is not the way it should be, because it's draining. It kills people's soul. It just sucks, trying to get hired through the front door like that. But you have to do it, right? There's the idea. The question was also like, is it worth cold emailing? Is it worth actually, reaching out and doing these? Yeah, it is, because you never really know. I'm not saying that you need to rely on it. It's not like the first line of defense when it comes to finding work and stuff, right? But it is something where you got to do it, because you really don't know, right? Because I've gotten jobs through cold contacts and stuff like that. I even on LinkedIn, whenever somebody like looks at your profile and they see that, like you can see that, for example, I'll message back recruiters. I'm like, hey, I saw that you were looking at my profile. I literally did this like last week, right? I think it was this weekend. I was like, hey, I saw you looking at my profile. I'm a freelance concept artist. If you're ever looking, just let me know, right? Just leave it at that. You don't have to don't bother them about it. You know what I mean? But just put the message out there. Let them know, hey, you're recruiting. I'm available for work, right? And that's you put it out there, and you don't know what's going to happen, but if you just leave it, then there really isn't any chance, right? But whenever they do find something, that maybe they'll hit you up, and that's kind of the best case scenario. But what I will say is the best way to find work is through your peers, right? The people that have taken class with you, the people that have experience with you specifically, that's who are the best people to kind of help you find work, because those people are going to vouch for you, right? I'm not going to vouch for some random person that I met on LinkedIn. I don't know you. I don't, it's not that I don't trust you or anything. I just don't know you, right? It is what it is. But if you're one of my students and you worked real hard in my class, I'd be very comfortable telling an art director friend or production designer that I know or whoever that, hey, this person, great working person, great hard worker, does what they say. If you're looking for, this skill set, this person has it, right? I wouldn't do that for a random stranger because I can't guarantee that. And that makes me look bad, right? If I say that and it's like, if I say that to somebody and ends up not being true, that it's now my reputation is shot, because that art director, whoever, is like, well, I don't really trust their opinion, because the last time we did this, it didn't work out too well. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where the issues kind of come in. You really have to build a relationship with some of these people that you're interacting with, in the classroom, in my opinion, in my very highly informed opinion in this scenario, is that it is the best place. Because people get hired together, right? If you find work at a studio, chances are they're hiring for other positions too, right? They're gonna be like, hey, do you know anybody that can do like environment design or do whatever, you know what I mean? And then you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I had this classmate that that worked really hard and they're really good at what they do. And then they go, oh yeah, can you bring them in? And then this person now has a leg up over some random hires because there's somebody vouching for you, If you don't turn on your camera, if you don't participate, you don't talk to anybody, it's not personal, but nobody knows you. So why the hell would they go on a limb to hire you? You know what I mean? And it sucks because we artists, we don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like it's not a good time to talk to people, right? It sucks because you have to, you gotta be like not awkward. You gotta like, you have to get out there and say something to somebody, and hopefully you don't piss them off. You know what I mean? You have to give them a crit. You have to receive a crit. You got to do something, because at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know how this person's going to react, but just talk, just be nice, be helpful. And I truly believe that, people will, help you, right? Because if you help them, like, you know, I have friends that they helped me learn how to paint. We fucking sat in his apartment and, you know, oil painted together. You know what I mean? Like we he taught me when I didn't know things, right? And that person, I will help them with whatever they need when they ask. You know what I mean? If you're watching this, you should ask more. You know what I'm talking about. But if you are watching this, I just want to let you know, man. But the whole idea is, you know, whenever I needed help, right, they were there, and it didn't cost them anything. It just cost their time, right? But now when I am in a position to help, right, that's when it really matters. And right now, you're gonna be looking around in your classrooms, and you're gonna be seeing a bunch of people that can't help you, right? Because there are a bunch of students that can't offer you anything. And that's when it matters the most, because when they can offer you something, that's when it's real shady. You know what I mean? You ever sit in class with somebody that's like, you know, they don't really talk to you because you don't really have any kind of skills. Like, you're not that good. You don't have any title credits under you. You don't have anything to offer them. So they don't really talk to you. You know what I mean? Like I can't even tell you how many people I've met like that. From when I was in school to me even teaching now. And I'm not like vindictive or anything, but I'm like, I will never help you, right? Just because if it takes an exchange like that for you to be a good person, you're not a good person, right? But if you went out of your way and helped out somebody or helped me, you know, I will fucking turn over mountains to kind of get you to where you need to go, right? But that only works if there wasn't any prior, I guess, you know, I guess any exchange, right? Because it's like, oh, they work at Lucasfilm. I need to get in on this. You know what I mean? Versus some random guy or girl that's just not really that good. They're in their learning phase or whatever, and you know, you're just talking to somebody that's kind of nice, you know, because that nice person, right, is going to be skilled one day. And you just don't know who that's going to be. So the best thing you can do is just be nice to everybody, right? I mean, be a good person. You don't do this because you're looking for a job, but just be a good person because it's the right thing to do, right? And that's going to go the furthest when you're looking for connections, because people know what shady people are like, just because that's, I mean, you know, I might have, you might not have interacted with somebody shady in art, but you know a shady person when you see one, right? I mean, you know, we've all gone to school, we've all gone to events, we've all done things, and when it's like, you just feel it, the crumminess, the weird like looks they give you, or the questions they ask. You know, it's always like, hey, can I see your portfolio? If you're asking, and this is for everybody, free pro advice. If you're asking someone for their portfolio, you're asking the wrong questions. Like, just stop it. Don't. You know, because I have students or even classmates before, and the first question is like, when you meet them, like, hi, my name's Kenny. Hey, can I see your portfolio? Like, why the fuck does that matter? You know what I mean? Like, it's just say hi. You know, say talk to me, because at the end of the day, right? It doesn't matter what your skill level is, right? You're just looking for someone that's kind of nice. You know, Google them later if you truly want to know. You know what I mean? But that's the worst question that you can ever ask anybody. It's, can I see your portfolio? Unless you're like an art director looking to hire, that's different, right? But if you're just randomly meeting somebody, right? That's weird. And you need to know that. If you don't know that, you know, start knowing that. And then, sorry, Julia added on to that. I'm mainly sad because I legit made some friends there and I don't get to work with them anymore. And unfortunately, they give me a ton of connections to other companies, but I feel almost mentally wrecked not doing anything for a company now. I have probably Stockholm syndrome. You know, at the end of the day, right, I think something that like, I guess I had to kind of like figure out as I was like going from like studio to studio, like, you know, we work at a place, right? Like, you know, you work at a studio, you make friends there, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I left the studio or I got let go or whatever. You know, my friends work there. It's like, I mean, you can still hit them up. You know what I mean? You can still call them and stay in connection. You could still send them memes. You could still do everything that you were doing before. Just do it as a person now. You know what I mean? Like so everybody here, you have friends outside of art, right? You don't work with them, right? So what do? You know, you just hit them up. Just be like, hey man, how you doing? Hey Holmes, hey girl, you know what I mean? Whatever. But like, it's like, you know, the whole idea is just hit them up, right? Just call them, because that's what the industry is. At the end of the day, you know, even not in layoff mode, right? The you know, the contract's gonna end, you know. And I had a friend that worked with me with Netflix. He literally hit me up over Zoom because we didn't live in the same city, and I thought that was the coolest shit in the world. You know what I mean? Nor, if you're hearing this, dude, that was fucking dope. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, you just made the initiative, right? He just said, hey, I just want to say hi. I just want to talk. You know what I mean? We talked about some art stuff and various other things. But at the end of the day, it's like, it was just that. We just talked. Just hit him up, right? Hop into a Discord community with a video chat or like a voice chat. Just hang out. Just talk to people. You know what I mean? It's not hard. It's not difficult to do these things, but it is uncomfortable. And that's the hard part, right? It's especially for introverts like us. I don't know if you're an introvert, but like, you know, most artists, right? Generally speaking, if I can get away with not talking to you, I guess, like, you know, as a normal person, I mean, you know, isn't that the first choice that we always make, you know? I'm not saying all of us do that, but you know, it happens, right? And it really is like, just hit them up, just call them, just like, you know, or don't call. Who calls nowadays? But like, you know, text them, do whatever, keep in touch, because that's who it is, you know. And just remember who was there whenever you needed help, because you know, this is, unfortunately, this is a cycle. This isn't a one-time thing. The industry isn't bad right now, right? Because this is the only time it's gonna be like that. It's bad because it's always gonna be like this, right? There's always gonna be layoff periods. There's always gonna be hiring periods. It's just always gonna be a thing. So you just have to understand that, you know. Something that I want to talk about as well, especially when it comes to like jobs and stuff, is, especially like now when there's a lot of layoffs, right? Don't let the pride of working somewhere or doing your career stop you from making choices. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, I say a lot of people, maybe it's just me, who knows? But a lot of people really do kind of set their personalities based off of where they work. You know, like when you talk to somebody, they're like, "Oh, I'm an artist here, and my self-worth is guided based on the fact that I'm an employee somewhere. Because if I'm not an employee somewhere, I'm worthless, right?" It's not said like that, but it is something that is behaved like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's something where you might not say it out loud, but the idea of getting another job makes you feel like a failure, right? And I just want to let everybody here know right now that whether you got the job or you didn't get the job doesn't mean you're a failure. You know, your existence, your your self-worth is not judged based off of the jobs and connections that you have. You know, you don't want to set your ideals based off the fact that you work somewhere, because why? You know what I mean? We all do it. You know, I'm very guilty of doing that. And it's something that you have to kind of grow and understand about yourself, where it's like, you know, yeah, you work somewhere and it's great right now, right? But that's not who you are. You know, you're not an artist at, you know, Riot, Blizzard, wherever. You know, you're your own person. You just happen to be employed there. You know what I mean? You're not better than anybody because you work there. You're not worse than anybody because you don't work there. You know what I mean? And I think as artists, especially because we put so much stock into this career, where it's like, because, you know, this is, in a lot of people's views, right? I'm not saying everybody's view, but a lot of people's views, this is a dream job to have, right? To be able to design for games and movies, for your name to be a title in a credit, or credited in some sort of IP or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, it's just a title. You know, are you a person? Are you somebody that has friends? Are you somebody that kind of goes out and does something fulfilling? You know, someone that does something outside of art, you know? Because if we put all of our stock into believing that we're worth something because we work somewhere, when you do get let go or when that job is done, right, then your self-worth gets shot, which, you don't want to do that, right? Because you're not any different because you don't work there anymore. You know what I mean? Your skill set is still your ability to be a nice person or to somebody that has great design skills. It's not dictated whether you work somewhere, And it sounds funny. Maybe, some people are like, why are you talking about this like this? But a lot of people feel that way. And if I don't work at Disney, if I don't work at Riot, then, I'm no good. It's like, plenty of people don't work there. You know what I mean? It's like, are they no good? No. It's just understanding that, you're more than the job that you're currently doing. You know what I mean? And I think like trying to, I guess, especially now when people are looking for jobs, like, cause people are like, oh, I don't want to work at a coffee shop. I don't want to make sandwiches or anything, because that's demeaning, right? Because I'm better than that. I'm an artist. I'm a whoever. At the end of the day, it's like, surviving, doing what you need to do to kind of get money on the table to be able to do what you want to do. That's the most important thing. Right. And obviously it's like a lot of people being let go now, especially ones that are having like a lot of trouble is, I would say a lot of students, right? Or not students, but like early professionals where they just got their first job and they were let go and they've never actually had to deal with that before. Right. Or even the fact that now they don't have like other skills to kind of help them find more work. Right. And I really do feel like it gets in the way of like, I guess possibilities where it's like, oh, I don't want, like I worked at Riot. I keep saying Riot because that was the let go thing, right? That was the layoffs. But like, oh, I worked here, so I can't work in theme park. I can't do package design. I can't do merch because I'm better than that. Or I've done work that's more important than that. And it's like, dude, who cares, man? I have friends that don't want to work in certain jobs because, they have bigger titles than that. And I'm like, are you serious, man? You know what I mean? Like, it's just something where it's just so short-sighted. And it's like, dude, you're never really going to be doing what you want to do anyway, And like for everybody, like when you do art for a studio, you will almost never, like 99% of the time, and even during that time, when you are doing something you want to do, it's not completely what you want to do, because the whole point is you work for somebody else. It's what they want you to do, right? The whole idea is they're paying you. They're the ones with the money and it's their product. You do what they want to do, right? And it's like, because I always thought when I first started, once I get here, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be excited about what I'm doing. I'm going to be, I've made it or whatever it is. Once I get this title, once I get these things, once this resume fills whatever, right? And then once you actually kind of get those things, it's like, it's so like, I don't know. It's like, whatever, who cares? Because it's actually, to be honest, it's weird when you bring it up in conversation. Like, oh, hey, I worked on this. Like, we're talking about golf or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not. You can't bring it up because now you're just showing off. Not that you should bring it up, but the whole idea is like, because you have this thing now. You have this accomplishment now. You want to tell everybody, or you're an accomplished human being because you did this, and it's like, no, not really. No one cares, first and foremost. And then, like two, it's like, it's never something that you wanted to do to begin with, just because it's somebody else's project, And I think really at the end of the day, I think for my conclusion from this is really, you just got to be doing it for yourself. Do it on your own, right? You have free time, you have personal projects or whatever. Like, take that time and make your personal thing, because maybe if you go to a place to learn something, I feel that's very valid, where it's like, hey, these people, this company, this whatever is the best at like making graphic novels or whatever, right? Like you want to be a graphic novel artist or something, and you go work at that place to go learn that thing, which is perfect. That's exactly it. So you can go do your thing versus like, I guess, putting stock into the idea that like the project that you work on is gonna be it's gonna be this amazing project that, you know, is like something that is gonna be every dream, every desire you've ever hoped for, you know. Because in reality, it really doesn't work that way. Most jobs that you go to, like even when you get to that place, it's just a job. It's just a thing. You know, no one really cares that much, right? It's not your product. It's their product, and you just got to know that. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of ranty right now. I guess I'm like always ranty. I gotta stop saying that.
Hey, Kenny.
What's up, dude?
I wanted to ask, how is it looked upon if, like, let's say you sent out your portfolio and, like, or talked to people and didn't find anything and then ended up taking a job you weren't as excited about, maybe paid less or not, like, the ideal studio, and then you do hear back from one of those other ones, like, very soon after. What's, like, the protocol for breaking hearts if you want to
I feel
jump
you, dude.
ship?
Yeah, no, that's a real thing, right? That happens a lot where like you threw out your resume to like 50 other people, right? One gets back to you pretty quick, and then you're like, well, no one else is calling me, so I'm just gonna follow up on this because I'd rather take this job that I kind of want rather than not have a job at all, right? The best thing that you can do is just tell the other job why. Just let them know, like, hey, you know, I really appreciate the offer that you gave me. Unfortunately, I was offered something else at another studio that I was actually looking forward to joining. You know, just be honest. Just tell them, like, straight up. Like, don't be like, oh, it's me, not you. What, you know what I mean? Like, don't be mysterious about it. Just, and they'll know. They'll like, oh yeah, you know. Like you're working at freaking a mobile game studio and then like freaking Blizzard called me or Riot called me or Disney called me. Yeah. As an art director, as a lead, I'm like, dude, go, man. Don't stay here. Most places, like most of your leads, most of your good leads. All right, let's make that clear. Most good leads, they know. Like they're like, yeah, we can't really compete with that. If they like you, they're gonna be like, hey, here's more money. Is that gonna help you stay? If that works, great. If it doesn't, whatever, you know. But just be honest, because at the end of the day, the people that you work for, they understand why, and the company that it's affecting doesn't even know your name. You know what I mean? Obviously, you might affect a relationship there where it's like you might not be able to go back to that studio depending on how they took it, right? But I mean, you're at the other studios, so who cares? You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
the gangster thing to do, if you're like, you know, if you're on a high, do both jobs. You know what I mean? If you're remote and you're able to handle that, and there's no conflict of interest or there's no legal things stopping you, I mean, you know what I'm saying? You know, you just take both meetings, do both works, you know? I mean, obviously that's a more advanced thing to do, but I mean, it is very, very lucrative. You know what I mean? So
I don't know if I'd have that confidence right off the bat like you can do.
It is a bit of a, I mean, I didn't like when I first started, I didn't have the confidence either, you know, and I had to like talk to like some of my friends and coworkers and be like, man, is this like, I had to talk to people that are actually doing it. And, you know, it's not that they weren't any help, but you know, they just kind of like brushed it off like it was easy. And I was like, it's not easy, bro. Yun, I'm talking about you. If you're listening to this, you're not listening to this, but if you are listening to this, man, this guy. Anyway, yeah.
One thing that you might want to do in the future, since you're a giant fan of cylinders, in Blender, I think you can change your your default sides from 32 to 64, and that should make it so you don't have to deal with as much of that like
Oh, that.
faceting, even when it's smoothed.
I need to do. So can you do that after the fact?
I think you can. I'm pretty sure you can change it in like your default settings so that when you bring up any cylinder, it starts at 64 instead of 32.
Oh, yeah, no, that's smart.
Otherwise, you can manually do it every single time.
Yeah.
And then
Gotcha.
for something like close up, like because that was pissing me off for a long time too. Like you either have to do like subdivision surface to smooth it out, or you have to like go in and like paint it every single time.
Yeah, and that's
64 like kind of does the trick. It like gets you past like that little bump of like optical illusion.
yeah. See, yeah, because I have to do that all the time, especially for like the front ones, like the ones that like kind of really have a silhouette. Like the inside ones, I don't really care too much about, but like it's those like the one I'm doing fixing right now. It's like it just doesn't like it just happens all the time. It's annoying, but yeah, I'll try that out.
Looks sweet though, man. I like it.
Appreciate it. Dope, guys. I'm gonna go for a little bit longer, but if you guys have any questions, hit me up. We're I think we're in a good we're good question mode, right? I feel like we're hitting some nice topics, so I just kind of want to go for a little bit longer. You know, Julia in the Discord says, yeah, one of my seniors said out of school she was doing full-time theme park and 40 hours a week at Cartoon Network. I'm assuming that's Cartoon Network. CTN, unless that's the other CTN. But anyway, regardless, I think something that happens a lot is like, I think once people get their first job, I think there's this misunderstanding of like how hard it is to actually maintain a job in this industry. Like when I first started, I was basically under the impression that I was going to get let go every single day. You know what I mean? Like whether that's whether it was true or not, I can't, I can definitely say that was like an overreaction, right? But I operated with that mentality, right? Because I was an outsourcing studio, and as people were unneeded for, as projects were finishing, right? I mean, it's natural. You just let go of people because the project's over, right? And so me and my coworkers, we were just like always freaking out, like, oh shit, they let go of this person. Fuck, you know what I mean? Like, why would they keep me? You know what I mean? And that's the whole idea. It's this constant fight of like trying to maintain your work. And I think like, I find this happening a lot where I'm not saying everybody does this, but a lot of people, they get their first job and they're like, cool, I can let off the gas. I'm like, dude, don't do it, man. Just don't. Work as much as you can, grind hard. It's harder, right? The issue with like school, because everybody here, or most people here, right, are doing art classes to a degree, right? I mean, you're taking art classes or whatever. You're doing a thing, right? And so when you take that class, you're grinding hard because you're like, dude, I gotta find work. I gotta do this thing. You're really cranking. And then you finally get to this point where you finally found work and you're like, cool. I made it. Unfortunately, that is just the starting line, because now you are in a different league. You might have been the best student in school, but you are the bottom of the professional field, because you got to remember, right? Being the best student is cool, but you got to remember every professional was a student. You know what I mean? You're in a different league, and it's like hard to fathom how good a professional artist really is. Like, it's like there's something that happens a lot where like, there's this idea that people kind of gauge each other based off of their work, right? Because like, you're like, oh, hey, I'm looking at this professional, I can do stuff like that. Like I'm 1,000% sure that half my students, not half my students, but half the students that have taken my class, probably have thought like, oh yeah, that level of painting isn't that high, or or whatever it is. People that have seen my work, right? It's not that crazy of an idea. where it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty good, but it's not like this person, you know what I mean? It's no Steve Messing, you know, it's no whoever, you know what I mean? And yeah, absolutely, you know, I'm very average compared to a lot of artists, right? But the whole point is, you know, to get to a skill level that I guess you can, comfortably or reliably execute your work, where you're like designing things and your hit rate is like at least 80%. Like, I think people really don't quite grasp how hard that truly is. Because, you know, we can find work pretty easily, right? Where it's like, you know, like getting your first job actually isn't the hardest thing that you could possibly do, right? It sounds crazy because a lot of people are like dying to find their first job, and that's absolutely valid. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but what I am saying is, getting your first job is not the hardest hurdle that you're going to encounter in your career, right? It just isn't. It's more often than not, it's not one of the easier things, but it is definitely not the hardest. You know what I mean? And so, what is the hardest, right? I mean, you remember struggling so hard. Why? What's harder than what I'm going through right now? Or not me, but for anybody that's watching, right? It's finding work consistently, because your project's gonna end eventually, right? Now you have to do it again. And especially like if you're doing like if you're trying to be a freelance artist, or if you're something that laid off or whatever, now you got to do it under pressure. And when you're a student, you're just kind of waiting. You know, you're just kind of like, I'm not being hired yet, but I'll just kind of hang out until I do, or I'll just keep working on my portfolio. But now it's like, I have a daughter, I have a family, I have I have a mortgage, I have whatever. And it is so much harder to really find work, especially because a lot of places it's really hard to find like senior level work because there's less of them. You know, as a junior, you know, they hire like by the batch. You know what I mean? Whenever you hire a junior artist, you're hiring like a couple. You're hiring like a few. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier. It's a lot more. The bottom has a lot more slots, right? Once you go higher and higher, there's only one art director. There's only like a few leads. There's only one creative director. You know what I mean? And it becomes really hard to consistently find work like that. And it's just, you know, you really gotta know that. Just gotta understand that, like, you know, our jobs really require us to be at a certain skill, and like mentally, you know, a lot of the painting skills that we see almost doesn't matter, right? Once you get to a certain level to where you're like, you can communicate certain ideas, you're basically there. You know what I mean? The art skill only gets you to a certain point, right? If you're an amazing painter, you can officially be a mid-level artist. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you know, it's a senior is more than just a painter. You know what I mean? It's more than just the ability to kind of paint something accurately, you know? And you really got to know that. So as you guys are like trying to find work and doing all these things, just like, you know, really try to figure out like, why is my senior actually a senior? Why are these people actually, you know, like above me in these instances? Because you're going to come into work, right? You're going to like get to this level, or you're going to get to your studio or whatever eventually, right? And then you're going to wonder why this person is actually a lead or an art director, right? Because you're like, oh, I can paint better than my art director sometimes. Like, you know, you hear that a lot where it's like, oh, my art director can't paint very well. He's not a very good artist. It's like, well, that's probably not why he's the art director. You know what I mean? And you really got to start figuring out what those things are to kind of level yourself up. Because if you're kind of operating with that, with that understanding of that, you know, your painting skills or your quality bar is what's truly important, you're already behind. You know what I mean? It's like you're not even playing the same game as somebody that is actually, you know, I guess in a high position or in a senior level position. You're not even in the same field. You're not even playing the same sport, you know? Sounds dramatic, but I mean, it really is. Trayvon Vaughn says, Lamau, I felt that every day when I got my first studio job. Yeah, you're referring to the just like feeling like you're gonna get let go, kind of. Yeah, totally. It really does. It's something where it's like it's scary. It really is a super hard thing to do to kind of maintain your job, right? To be able to, I guess, consistently find work or consistently get picked, right? It's difficult. It truly is. And I can't stress that enough for anybody that's like looking for work and trying to get their first foot in the door. It is not just like apply and you'll get it, right? You really have to fucking do something different. Be a person that is worth pursuing. You know what I mean? All right. Shannon says, "Wait, Kenny, how do you manage your mental health and stress with that kind of mentality, and how do you know when it's okay to slow down, if it's ever okay?" That's a good question. It is something where you kind of have to, like, I think, like with the idea of like never not slowing down. It's not that you never slow down. I think for me, the point is, wrong layer, sorry. The point is not that you're never slowing down. It's that just keep going for a little bit longer. Push that just a little bit farther, right? Because you're gonna find, you're gonna get to a point to where now your career kind of starts carrying you, right? Where, the projects that you did a couple years ago are finally at the quality that you need it to be at. Because your first job, you're most normal people, right? I guess average concept artists, right? They end up at a studio that, you're kind of doing like junior work stuff, right? You're just doing turnarounds, you're doing whatever, right? Because that's what you do, right? And so that first job, even if you could show the stuff that you want to show, you don't even, or the stuff that you did, you don't even want to show it because, I mean, it's not really that impressive that you did a coin, you know what I mean? But that's junior work. That's what it is. But that's where that personal work kind of comes in, just kind of go home on the weekends, do a little bit of a painting. You have a little more cushion. You have a little more time on your side, which is perfect. But use that time to then apply the stuff that you learned, right? You watch someone do a keyframe, you watch somebody do a thing, or maybe they even gave you a chance to apply to do some of these paintings. Do it for yourself, not the same topic. Don't get shot by legal, but do the painting again, but with your topic, and then repeat some of the feedback that your art director gave you, right? Because that's the important part. The art director is guiding you. So you really have to make sure that when you do this, you're understanding like why they said something, or even trying to apply it again, because that's what's gonna kind of carry you. You know what I mean? But after a couple years, you start having like enough work. Your resume is big enough to kind of let you relax a little bit and let you kind of get to a point that you're somebody that I guess can, I'm not say take it easy, because I am very hesitant to say that to anybody, but you're able to kind of relax just a little bit more, right? Like whenever I talk to students, right, my first recommendation for everybody is, first get in the door, right? That's the first step, right? Next step is try to finish by 6, right? Try to finish by the end of day. Most juniors, when they get into the studio, they're very gung-ho, but oftentimes it's really hard to keep up with normal concept artists, because you went from turning in an assignment, once a week to now once a day, right? Now you have to be 5 times faster than you were before, 5 days a week, right? You're submitting for 7 days really. So you have to submit work 5 to 7 times faster than you originally, I guess, are kind of trained to, right? Because in school, it's once a week. So you're probably doing overtime, chances are, right? If you're not doing overtime, that's confident. I'm not saying do or don't do it. I'm just saying that's bold. But, chances are you're trying to keep up. My first suggestion is, get to a point to where you can clock out at 7 o'clock, because that's 6 or 7 o'clock, whenever your studio ends, because that's when you need to be finished with work. And then after that, once you're able to kind of, because you start your timing starts finishing where it's like, oh, I finished at 6 today, great. And then you're able to finish by 5, you're able to finish by 4, you're able to do things a bit quicker, and then you can start doing your own work and stuff like that, right? But after a couple of years, you're able to kind of really manage your time effectively, and you're able to, kind of live your life again, and you have the work to kind of back you up. So it's the first couple of years, they're always a drag, but after you get like 2 or 3 projects under you, you have some nice personal work, your portfolio kind of gets you a call a lot, right? That's when you kind of bring it back, really, pay attention to your family if you have one, experience love again, you know what I mean? Because that stuff obviously matters as well. But I think that's, yeah, you know what I mean? I'm not perfect at it. I am chronically overworking myself, and I probably shouldn't, for sure. I'm not saying I'm a great example of this, but it is what it is. So shit, because it's like 9:20 right now, and I've been painting all day at this point. So am I good to follow in terms of advice? No, probably not. Why are you even listening to me, right?
I have a question.
Yo, what up?
So before this last question, you were kind of talking about, or like one of the things you said was like being somebody who like stands out, like being an artist that people want. And I know that like can maybe change like depending on like what type of art you're going for. But I wanted to ask if you could like talk about how to be like a more desirable artist, like how to really present yourself more. And I know that like the short answer is like to be a good artist, but I feel like I see a lot of good artists looking for work. So like how else can you stand out essentially?
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't truly know. I'm gonna say that for real. Because I don't really feel like I am an artist that stands out. You know what I mean? So I can't really answer that. I guess I can't really say that with like full confidence. But what I will say is I will try my best to say what I think that means, right? And so usually I think, somebody that stands out, right? Like they offer something that other artists don't have or don't do, right? You know what I mean? Like it's usually something like that. They usually like, I don't know, there's something about that artist that I guess you can't find anywhere else. You know what I mean? So if you're thinking about your favorite artists, why are they your favorites? Why not somebody else? Because this person probably has an aesthetic or has a look or something that, I guess isn't present in a lot of other artists, right? Because otherwise you would just like their work, right? But with that in mind, well, where does that come from, right? Where does that, I guess, like, talk to them or ask them or pay attention to some of their talks or whatever and see like, what do they like? This person that, paints a lot of cars and cameras and stuff, chances are they probably like that. You know what I mean? And they dive into it just a little bit deeper. They have interests outside of just the one thing. You know what I mean? Especially like some artists that are very gung-ho about a certain studio. They oftentimes just paint like that one studio. And the issue with that is a lot of people do that. You know what I mean? Because if you want to work at Riot and you paint like Riot, yeah, you have a good chance, but also a lot of other people do paint like that as well. They have artists that can paint like Riot. So now what do you offer? What is the thing that makes you different compared to someone like that, right? So in my opinion, it really does come down to interests. What interests do you have that make you truly somebody that is, I guess, worth pursuing, Do I truly know? I can't say I do, right? I can't, sit here and try and tell you like, this is exactly how to do it. because in my experience, you know, I have some things that I can offer studios, but I'm not like raking in every single job offer that's available. You know what I mean? Like I'm still in my growing phase as well when it comes to being an artist. At least I feel as such, you know. But it is something where I've noticed time and time again, the artists that are better, they usually are somebody that I guess has something that the other artists don't have, or very are very, I guess, unique in some sort of way. You know, that's what I think. Do I truly know? I can't say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know it's kind of like a question that can't really be answered, or it's just like more of a just subjective answer that can be given. But it's something that I find myself stressing over because, like, on one side, I'm just like, you know, you can't really stress over something you don't know, or like, and just continue to try to improve. Like, that's all you can really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like that's one of the things I think about when I think about like, what am I going to work on next for my portfolio? Like, I want to work on something that's going to help me stand out, but then I don't know what that is. And so I just am stuck.
Yeah. Right. It's a lot of like, so, because a lot of times I feel the idea is it comes down to when I'm doing a portfolio piece, right? What's gonna help me get a job? You know what I mean? That's usually what happens. It's usually like, I need to find work, so I'm gonna make a portfolio piece that gets me that work, right? That's the logical idea, right? In theory, that should work. But whenever you start designing for somebody else, your ideas kind of start hitting a generic wall, because chances are, I guess you're probably designing something that you're not 100% interested in, but it's something that I guess you feel like a lot of people want to see. You know what I mean? And that's where you kind of run into those problems where it's like, you know, I don't know if anybody's going to like this project, but I did want to paint a camera and a dune buggy, right? That's like, I already kind of had these in mind as I was running. And so a lot of the times, you know, there's this, I guess, pull of like, I want to design something that's going to get me hired. So I won't do like something that's 100% in my interests. You know, I'll kind of do something that's like, you know, kind of in my interests. You know what I mean? But it's not like your hobby. You know, it's not like the thing that you do or whatever, you know? So it's really difficult to really like, in my opinion, to really hit something on a deep level, because you don't really know much about that topic. You know what I mean? Generally speaking, I'm not saying you or anybody, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's really hard to hit something that means something when it doesn't mean anything to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where like I really like to at least try and do something that is vaguely interesting to me, because if it's vaguely interesting to me, chances are it'll be interesting to somebody else, because, you know, there's a bunch of people that like your topics, the things that you enjoy in life. A lot of people like that too. And so with that in mind, how are you, like, what are you, I guess, doing that, you know, I guess, helps kind of, I don't know, incorporate some of those ideas, you know what I mean? And that's kind of where, like, you got to be honest. Like, I do mentorships for everybody that's wondering. I do mentorships. So if you're looking, just let me know. But what I am saying is, I always ask them, hey, what's your favorite things? And I go specifically, I don't even tell them why. This is before we even start, but I always go, outside of art, right? What are things that you enjoy? What are things you like? If you like spaghetti, fucking write down spaghetti, you know, just who cares? I don't care what it is. And I'm not going to tell you why I'm asking. Right. And then you get some really unique ideas, really, really unique topics, because they have to like dig deep and they have to find out like, oh, what do I like? You know? And because of that, then we start finding we start using that as a reference board, right? We start we pick a few, right? And then we kind of go from there. And that's, I find, helps create the most interesting, I guess, things, you know, like it helps you kind of, I guess, generate a lot better ideas than, I guess like, oh, hey, like Coral. Coral is a huge form language thing that every form language student does. It's like, I did it, you know what I mean? But everyone does it. Coral, Viking, Blast Furnace, what else? Like, you know what I mean? Like those are generally it, right? And it's just like, it's like, yeah, it's cool, but do you think it's cool? You know what I mean? So. I did all of those. I just want to be real with you guys. That was those were my form languages in school. Sick. Dope. Look at that dude just smoking, dog. So, all right, we are 30 minutes over usual. So, I hope like this conversation really kind of helps put things in perspective and really helps people understand kind of like what, there's things that outside of art are super important. There's things that are inside of art. There's mentalities and stuff that we want to go over. And I just want to make sure that, as we're talking about these things, really setting up people to understand like, there's things that you need to work on outside of painting, whenever you're trying to develop your skills as an artist. Really, truly understand that to be a good artist, you have to be a person. You have to be somebody that actually says something, somebody that brings value to a conversation. If you ever have trouble kind of bonding with people, or you ever have like, you ever feel like you're bored outside of painting, you're probably an empty shell of a human. I don't say it like that, but you know what I mean? Like you probably don't do anything, if you ever like, and I'm guilty of this as well. Like when you're in school, when you're in art school, and if you ever have trouble relating to your friends outside of class, outside of art, chances are you don't do anything outside of art. You know what I mean? If you ever have trouble like kind of communicating, like, I really just hang out with art people because that's who like kind of, those are the people that kind of get me. You know what I mean? So you probably don't do anything outside of art because, like it's like your personality at this point. And I'm guilty of this too. I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody else. But it is something that you really have to work on because these ideas, these things that you bring to the table is what makes you special, And, we're like actively getting rid of that as you kind of go into the workforce because now you're not really offering anything because you spend all that time, I guess, worrying about trying to find work and stuff, but not actually living a life, But that living the life brings in new inspirations, new ideas, new form languages that really do go a long way when it comes to, I guess, designing, right? Because that's what makes you special. That's what makes you different from somebody else. You know what I mean? So with that note, guys, just as a reminder, we're doing color keys next week. So, we're going to do a final presentation on what this ends up being, right? It's just this stupid smoking camera, you know what I mean? But I'm going to paint the backgrounds. I'm going to paint the car. You've seen me do that. If you haven't, you'll see it eventually. But the whole point is, for this camera, for your props, don't show it off in, just like a 3/4 turnaround. No one gives a shit about that. No one cares because it doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? But whenever you're designing your props, show it in context, show it doing something, give it a moment, show people that this thing is alive. Has a purpose. It has some sort of function to it that people can actually get behind. If they can see that, it sells the idea that much better, right? I'll show you the final result next week. Yeah, we're starting color keys. So we'll kind of break that down. If you want to be part of that, kind of feedback session or that kind of, I guess, assignment, right? Please join my Discord. If you go to the server shop, you'll see that there's a whole different kind of role that you can purchase to kind of be part of that group. Currently, we're like 15 strong, right? A lot of good artists in there. Hopefully, we can kind of talk about some of that work next week. But yeah, we'd love to have you, right? So hopefully this is something that you're interested in. If you're not super interested in color keys, just know that being a part of that group, you get to vote on the next topic. So hopefully this is something that you hopefully you want to be a part of. So, but yeah, January is wrapping up. I'm gonna finish this. We'll show you next week, and we'll do some fun, cool painting stuff. I feel like I've been doing a lot of 3D, so you know. With that in mind, you know, I really appreciate everybody that's kind of watching, everybody that joins, everybody that has any input, or anybody that doesn't have any input, right? It really does go a long way. It really does help me out. So yeah, just keep going. And if you have any questions, save it for the next stream. So with that in mind, see you.